Transportation Operational Service Committee meeting. If I can have a roll call, please.
Ms. Gonzalez, Mr. Riddle, Mr. McBride, Ms. Hannah,
Yes.
Ms. Lansing,
Here.
Ms. Fabian, President Ewing.
Here. So we do have a quorum and 4 board members present. I do expect Mr. McBride to come in any moment. Board members Gonzalez and Fabian both did notify me that they were unable to make the meeting due to conflicts. So first up, we have approval of meeting minutes from the February 20th, 2024 OSC meeting.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Riddle,
Second.
second by Ms. Hannah. Any comments, questions, corrections to the minutes? All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Minutes are approved. All right, first item up is our compensation study, information and recommendations, phase 2.
Yes. Thank you. Good evening, members of the board, superintendent, staff, and community. Thank you, Mr. White. So the first agenda item we have for you this evening is the compensation study update and recommendations for phase 2. I would like to remind the audience and the Board of Education, phase 1 included principals, assistant principals, and coordinators. Phase 2 were for all other non-union, what we're calling non-represented positions within the district. Next slide, please. All right, so we do have an overview of a presentation for you. This is the agenda. We're going to discuss the background and purpose, the project deliverables, the analysis that took place, as well as the results and the recommendations. All right, thank you. So 3 primary reasons or purpose items for the phase 2, and this is consistent with phase 1. Recruitment and retention focus. So not only are we looking at compensation, we're evaluating jobs to retain non-represented, what we're identifying as non-represented positions, or non-contract administrative positions within the district. We also did a competitive market analysis that included comparing practices amongst 18 peer districts, as well as industries outside of education for some of our non-represented jobs that have a focal point and expertise outside of education. And then we did a pay structure review regarding base pay for these individuals. We had 4 specific project deliverables. That was the structured job hierarchy, the market evaluation and pay audit, developing a documented compensation framework, as well as providing an effective employee communication strategy so that when individuals apply for jobs within our district or they want to know about jobs in our district, they know what compensation package goes with it, and it explains how the district identified that for them to consider when they're making their job choice. We do have a breakdown of phase 1 and phase 2 at the bottom of this slide. Phase 1 identified 69 employees over the course of 69 jobs. Phase 2 identified 108 employees over 79 jobs. And the reason why there is an asterisk there is because there are 5 executive employees that were included in the evaluation to validate the scope alignment, but these 5 employees currently have a contract that is not within the pay structure that's represented here this evening. Next slide, please. All right, developing the salary range framework. So there was an in-depth review done, which included district administration, as well as Morgan HR, regarding 79 jobs. You will see the positions identified that were stakeholders within the process, and you also see in the evaluation the 18 peer districts on the right that were reviewed in alignment with this scope to see how the district compared. We also looked at cross-industry benchmarking for the non-educational industries, particularly in the areas of IT, human resources, business and financial services, as well as operations. We did grade-based ranges, which is going to be on a future slide, based on the information that was evaluated as part of this criteria with the scope that was done in comparison with the other districts or in other industries. And we had objective decision-making in this process based on the responsibilities within each role. Next slide, please. So what we've attempted to do for you is provide pay grade charts that clearly identifies the pay grades associated with certain titles that currently exist within our district. You'll see on the left-hand column, there's the executive, which ranges And I'll start from top to bottom, pay grades 28 to pay grade 23, and the positions associated with that pay grade. You'll also notice that within the manager area, we have starting pay grade 22 down to pay grade 16. And again, I'll get into the ranges of these pay grades, but specifically based on the scope of these roles and responsibilities, factors such as how many individuals these positions supervise were considered as part of this. Next slide, please. All right, we also have the professional category, which is grade 17 down to grade 14. And then we have the support area, which is grade 13 down to grade 10. And again, you see the position titles associated with the grades. All right, Mr. White, if you could go to the next slide. This information on the proposed salary structure side is similar to what we did for the Phase 1 employees, but there are many more grades associated with these different positions. So you start at pay grade 23, which is not the executive category. You have a minimum, midpoint, and a maximum for all of the pay grades, 23 down to 10. So for the previous two slides and the positions associated with the pay grades, you see the ranges, starting and ending salary, associated with all the roles. And then we do have a framework that was provided to us as part of this Phase 2 work that helps the district identify how to place individuals based on the role they're applying for and their experience and other factors, to put them appropriately within these ranges. Next slide, please. So this is what we really want to accomplish with this strategic compensation alignment. Validate position tenure for those employees who are currently in the district and recognize their dedication for those individuals that have 6 or more years of experience, which again is also in alignment with what we did in Phase 1. Competitive retention, which is aligning those standards to ensure we retain top talent, and then also value acknowledgement. So flexible positioning in the pay range to reflect the leader's experience and contributions. The adjustment strategy, again, implement below minimum adjustments based on individuals that are below the minimum on the pay structure that was on the previous slide, currently in our district, and ensure that those employees are compensated within the second quartile. And just to make a moment to expound on that a little bit, we have the minimum, midpoint, maximum. We break that up into 4 quartiles, so when the human resources team reviews this, they're looking at quartile 1, quartile 2, quartile 3, and quartile 4 for their placement strategies. So again, the adjustment strategy would to ensure that experienced leadership employees are compensated within at least the second quartile, and that goes to their years of experience. And then the last bullet point reiterates that move employees with at least 6 years in their current role to the second quartile. So we're looking at overall district experience as well as experience within their current roles.
Before we get into the recommendations, can I ask the question about the last slide?
That was a clarifying question, Ms. Hannah. Go ahead. And if you can use the mic.
On the, you say, could you ask Mr. White?
Mr. White, can you go back one slide, please?
Okay, adjustment strategy. Under adjustment strategy, could you explain implement below minimum adjustments? What are you talking about?
Sure. So, Mr. White, if you could go back to the last slide. Currently, what's being proposed on this slide is the new pay structure for the district, aligned to the positions linked to certain pay grades. So if we currently have staff members that are below minimum within these categories, we're recommending as a point for an adjustment to bring them to the minimum proposed salary range for their position if they're not currently there.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. White. So these are the recommendations that the district is bringing forward for final approval. Approval of the salary structure in and of itself. Approval of equity salary adjustments based on the criteria that have been identified with the alignment strategy. inclusive of lump sum options for those above max range for their position. And then the third recommendation more clearly identifies that. So if there is any employees that are below the maximum range within their current position, we would propose a lump sum payment for them to ensure that their base doesn't deviate too far outside of the range until such range catches up with them.
And that's in alignment with what we did with the principals and the assistant principals. Am I correct?
Yes, Superintendent. We took that same approach at phase one.
And then, Mr. McBride, you have a clarifying question?
Yeah, I was going back to what Ms. Hannah was speaking about in reference to dealing with the low and below scale. Also, are you looking at, as far as experience, the amount of responsibility as well as responsibility as well as time and invested in the district, along with the when making that decision? Because I was looking at some things, some of the staff in this tier that you're speaking about have more responsibility than other staff, and it just looked a little unbalanced.
And let me piggyback off that, and you can include your answer for him. Also, when you talk about experience, are you speaking of experience here in the district, or experience from outside, or is it just in district?
Sure. Thank you for the question. So when we evaluated the individuals in district, we evaluated their tenure, their hire dates in district, as well as the years they have in their current position. In some cases, that amount of time was not the same if individuals have transition roles while they've been in the district.
Was that in line with what we did with the principals and the assistant principals?
Yes, Superintendent. We stayed consistent with that strategy from phase one to phase two.
Go ahead. Again, that's why we don't like to open up Q&A, is because when I let one board member do it, I got you good. But that's why I wanted them, if it's clarifying, so you guys understand. But as far as the actual questions, we can hold until the end of the presentation, please. Please continue, Mr.
Thank you. And I'm almost concluded. So you'll see at the bottom of the screen, there is a fiscal impact as well as the amount of employees impacted with this item number 2, the equity salary adjustments. $122,306 impacting 15 employees. And then the last slide as part of the presentation, if you could scroll up, Mr. Wright, is just some next steps. The next steps will be to train the HR staff regarding the compensation guide, the placement strategy, as well as employee communications, which would be done through communicating on our website, as well as a PowerPoint presentation with a voiceover that has information for prospective employees who may be interested in our district, and including some of this information that's been previously discussed in other areas such as our job postings.
Thank you. So I'm going to go to Mr. Riddle, and then I'll go to Mr. Edwards. Mr. Riddle.
Yeah, Mr. Moulton, thank you for this presentation. I'm a little unclear what that approval of equity salary adjustment means. 122,000. That's to bring people who are not at equity up, or it looked at, if you go back to that, it talked about a one-time payment for those who were already at max. So that confused me. Can you explain that a little bit?
Sure, I can explain that. So the lump sum payment only applies to individuals that have been identified above the max range for their current position. That would not impact this. We would evaluate that and process that at the end of the school year. This would apply for individuals that would have 6+ years in their current role, or who have been identified to be below minimum for the range that their current position is in, per the pay structure chart in a previous slide.
So I can understand the people that are below. You're going to bring them up, but the people that are already at max, you're going to give them a lump sum.
No.
Isn't that going to still keep them above max?
So yeah, if you can, I don't want to jump in, but I think we're missing the question. So typically, if this only applies, Deputy Moulton, if we actually vote for an increase, meaning these individuals are not guaranteed a percent increase, but the board has done at least 4% for as long as I've been on the board. So let's assume we approved them at 4%. Anybody that was above the maximum or is maxed out, essentially capped,
Right.
they wouldn't receive a 4% increase. They would receive a lump sum. Is
They
that
would-
your question?
Yes, so that lump sum would be less than the 4%, because otherwise nobody would ever catch up to them.
So
is
I
that-
think I can help with this,
Yeah.
possibly. Can we go back to the mean, medium?
Mr. White,
So,
bless you.
Bless you.
Can we go
Mr.
back
White,
to
could
that
you go back
slide,
to the
please?
pay structure chart, please?
yeah, and while we're doing that, can you,
Can,
Well,
Ms.
let's,
can
let's
I?
answer this question.
Yeah,
so that
so,
way we can
and
get clarity.
I see Mr. Harris is here with us this evening, so if I do not explain this accurately, please jump in. So hypothetically, I'm at level 23, and I'm already at my max at $214,500. At that year, if the recommendation is that we give a 4% increase, this person would get a 4% stipend. It would not be an increase to take it up 4% on their base.
Oh,
Their base would remain the same because they're capped out, but that 4% would come in the form of a stipend. And that's exactly what we did for our principals and assistant principals. I do want to add that, for clarity, there is a lot of room here, and that's how it's been built out, but we would look at this proposed salary structure maybe every 3 to 5 years in regards to cost of living, inflation, et cetera, right? So this is going to be a living document that we will have to revisit. It's not something that's set in stone for centuries and centuries to come.
That explains my question. So that doesn't apply to their base, it just gives them a one-time, so they still get the increase, but it's not, and the next year they get an increase again, whatever it was, but it's not affecting their base. Thank you.
okay, and that's my question in
Go ahead, Ms.
reference to individuals' base salary, because people's base salary is important in terms of their retirements and all of that. And you already said that we're not going to be giving people their 4% cost of living raise. And how do we exempt them from getting cost of living raises? And how are we making adjustments on their base salaries where their retirement and so forth will be impacted? And so I don't know where, but somebody financial need to answer that question.
I'm going to answer part of the question, and then the retirement one, we can probably flip it over to Gwen. But we're not saying that they will not get their increase. What did you call it? I forgot the exact
That's
word
what
you used.
you,
They would still get
Cost
their
of living.
increase. It just would not be compounded to their salary. So if you're at the max, you would still get, if the cost of living increase for that year is 4%, they would get 4% of their base as a stipend. The next year, if we gave 3%, they would get 3% of their base, but it's not compounded on their base salary. So that 214, once you're at the max, will never increase. You will only get the stipend or the cost of living increase at the end of the year. Now, I do need the board to know, I see Mr. Harris here, there is a lot of room in there. Like, everybody is not there. It takes time to get there. So there is, as they built this salary schedule, they've given, I'm going to use the word cushion. There's room in there from the mid to the max.
So, and this may bring clarity, and it can be a bring back unless you have it, Mr. Harris or Deputy Moten. How many individuals in the district were currently at max?
Right.
None. So there's nobody who
We're
currently
at what?
at max.
We
At
didn't have anybody at max, and when we compared the salaries, your salaries, to all of the school districts, the comparable districts, Ms. Hannah, we added on 25% onto those ranges, so we can expand those so that we wouldn't run into the situation where people are bumping up against the max, and then the process has a longer shelf life because it's going to take a while for people to get to that maximum salary. So what you're voting on today would be two things, and we're mixing them up, but I can see why we would mix them up. The first thing you're voting on is out of the 79 people that we examined, right? 13 to 15 people were impacted, meaning that when we developed the job groups and ranges, right, we found about 13 people either below minimum that we had to adjust and bring them to minimum, people who are in their jobs 6 years or more without a promotion, to Mr. Moten's point that we put them over in the second quartile of their range. And then we had folks who, once we developed the grades and ranges, they were not equal or equitable pay-wise with the group of their peers. Like, I might have been a manager and the midpoint just say the average salary was $118,000 in that grade. I might be at 102. Or I might be at 98. Then what we did as we looked at that, we would move that person over by way of adjustment to make them equitable within their peer group. So of the 79 folks, 13 or so folks were impacted that way. Either they had to be adjusted to minimum, they had to be moved over to the second quartile because they've been in their job over 6 years, or they just deserved an equity adjustment to be equal with their peers within their grade. So that's the first thing you're voting on, and that was the $100 and some thousand. So that's the impact of the study. The next item is the piece where we're talking about what if I got to the maximum of my pay grade, and then everyone is getting a cost of living raise. It's going to their base salary. I'm at the top of my grade. What happens to me now? Then what happens to me now, since I'm at the top of my pay grade, then I get my cost of living increase too. I'm not denied my 4% or whatever you all agree upon, but it's not added on to my base salary because I'm already at the top of my range, which
That doesn't make sense.
no, it makes perfect sense because I would be compounding. If I'm at the top of my range, I shouldn't add anything else to my base. I should get my raise. I should get my 4%, but I should get it in by way of a stipend. But we saw no one even close to. I can see as a board member, I'd be concerned about it too, because as you mentioned, it is my base salary that's going to dictate my retirement benefits,
Right.
so on and so forth. But we looked at it and expanded those ranges by 20%, so that it's going to take a while for someone to get there. And to the superintendent's point, this isn't a document. The process is meant to last for 20 years, but the document itself, by way of the ranges, you should look at the ranges probably every 3 to 4 years. In case of inflation, in case of technological changes like AI and things of that nature that might change some grades and some jobs or expand them. So you should pressure test this document within about 3 or 4 years. Not the whole process, just the ranges. But I'm not that concerned. I can see why you're concerned. I share your concern, but based on what I've seen and looking at all of the employees, I don't think you have anyone close to maxing out yet. So that shouldn't be our concern for a few years easily.
But their base pay is not going to be affected.
No. Under no
That's
circumstances.
what I'm concerned about.
And I get that as a board member. Under no circumstances should employees or will an employee's base pay be affected or impacted, unless we're increasing it.
Right, right.
Does that make sense?
I'm still humming, so,
Oh.
yeah.
Mr.
Okay.
Edwards, did you still have your question? Yes. If we can get
For
the
Mr.
microphone.
Moten? Okay.
So I want to ask this question, right? As we talking about salary and money, you know, that's really, really sticky for the community, right? So when we talking about the salaries of administration, who is there a board member at the table when this being decided? Meaning, if a job offer is offered to somebody in a leadership position, we usually come back with a package, right? We offer them an amount, right? Is there a board member present when that's done, or is they at the table when this number is being created?
So, I mean, Deputy Moulton, HR files under your purview.
No, when a position is offered to a prospective candidate, that's reviewed by the HR department. Now we have specific guidelines that will be transparent on how those offers are made and what factors and what criteria is met and achieved and reviewed when the offer is made by our Human Resources Department.
Leon,
Okay.
can I add on to that? So, sorry, Mr. Moulton. I'm just going to go back a little bit. So, the reason we went out for this, in a sense, audit this type of work is to ensure that we had a transparent pay structure that the public could see and applicants could see what those ranges would be. So if we create a job description hypothetically for a manager at level 13, you can look up there, the pay range from that would be 42 to 68, and we would come up with the salary based off whatever the resume, a bunch of other variables, right? So no, the board is not present at that point. Where the board is present, though, is no one is offered a job in the district or is able to take the job in the district until the board votes on their appointment. So the board does vote on the appointment of employees in the district. So I just want to make that clear of those delineation of duties.
Okay. And I appreciate that, and I appreciate you too, Mr. Harris. And I know we said this document would be revisited, but what is my concern? Because we've been watching it in the district, right? I've watched in the last couple of years where we've taken titles and we've reduced the title and given another name so that we can put certain people in positions, right? And so I listened to you say today that what you guys look at as it relates to when you guys are giving them the money. You say you look at how long they've been in a district, how long they've been in said role, right? And so I challenge this board here because when I think about this district, and I'm gonna use an employee as an example, I'm sorry, I have to. I look at Dr. Wilson. So when we're talking about his position as director of security, how much education do you need, right? He's been in that role for umpteenth years. He's the lowest paid director in the district, it looks like, and he's a black man, right? I see managers that get paid more than him. That's a concern for me. The second piece is this. We had a former lady working here, Miss Angela Edwards, right? She was making a certain amount when she left this district and couldn't get a pay raise. But then we hired another guy, Mr. Villanovas, and we brought him in making more money than she was made when she left, and she had been in the district how long? This is why this pay scale is a concern for me, and why I think that board members should be at the table when we're talking about money, because we're talking about the taxpayer dollars. We need a voice at that table to make sure that this type of behavior don't go on. Because I'm looking at a lot of black people in the district. I've watched again, and I need somebody to clarify this for me. Because I've watched people get moved up in positions that I know have no experience, they get in the pay. And I've watched people with experience, well qualified in said position, being underpaid.
So I not only want to respond because I have to say, Mr. Edwards, is I'm not going to talk about specific employees, but I will speak into generalities. What you raise is the reason that we did this assessment. When we say it's a tool, to your point, the board acknowledged the inequity. We hired a firm to come in to review the inequity, and we would be addressing, if we vote for it, to adjust the inequity. It's because if somebody came, to your point, and you have equal candidates who have the same experience, who apply for the same job, there shouldn't be a vast disparity about how those individuals are paid. So what I want to do is acknowledge that that's what this is. This was done to address it. Your point of a board member being at the position, the superintendent, we manage the superintendent, and we also have a deputy or general counsel. Those are our two direct reports. All of the other functions are the superintendents. That's the delineation of duties that she spoke of. So when those recommendations come, if we feel like there's a bias, if we feel like it's unfair, if we feel like they need to go back to the table, as a board, we have an obligation to, at that point, to review it. But I just want to, from an education standpoint, the board is not at the table. But to address even some of the individuals that you spoke to, that's part of what this assessment did, and it looked at all of those roles. And going back to what Mr. McBride was asking, and even what you speak to, is, and Mr. Harris, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but your assessment also reviewed scope, right? So you looked at people and say, if we were calling them director, what were the responsibilities of a director? If you were calling them a manager, what were the responsibilities of a manager? Should those be changed or adjusted? But I'll let you speak to that.
And I'm going to just say this, and then you could go here. And I appreciate that. But what I want to say to the board is this. This community has lost confidence in y'all. We see a lot of times somebody come up here and say something to this board, and we wonder when it's going to be addressed. I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, you was here about 7-8 months ago, right? And you talked about the HR department, and you talked about how terrible it was and things of that nature. We did nothing as it relates to that department. So again, although I appreciate what we've done, and I appreciate the time and effort we put into this, but again, how do I know that this board is actually going to do something and we're going to enforce these things? Because also, and I say this, we have employees that are scared to come stand up at this mic and speak about their grievances, especially when it's their pay, because again, and I'm sorry to bring this up because I know we're talking about the pay scale, but it all goes together. We've had employees sitting downstairs in jail. It's almost like they get retaliated against when they come out and speak out about things that they are not liking. I've been coming to these meetings for the last 4 years, y'all, and I'm just saying, what is this board going to give this community for us to believe in, or believe that you guys are actually going to do something? Because I'm tired of wasting Mr. Harris' time, because if he come up here, again, he says something about the HR department, and we've made absolutely zero changes in there. Zero.
And I got a question.
I'll let Mr. Harris respond.
First off, Ray, thank you for your comments. I'm not going to pour water on your head and tell you it's raining. The things that you observed as it relates to people being in jobs, maybe they may not be qualified for it. Seems like job descriptions were sort of made out of thin air. That's not unusual for HR departments. I will say to you, now with these grades, bands, and so forth, it's almost, I don't want to say it's impossible, but it's almost dummy proof. We went through 76 jobs, spent quite a few days going through breadth, depth, scope of jobs, what qualifications you need for that to hold that title, to the points that you're making, to the very points that you're making. And then once people were placed, then we did our equity analysis to make sure that women, people of color, veterans, and so forth were not adversely impacted or affected. Going forward now, if someone wanted to just pull a job description out of thin air and make up one, which HR departments do sometimes, some with good intentions and some with not, they still have to pressure test it against the profiles that we put together, and that profile will dictate whether it's a grade 13 or 17 or grade 20. You can't just say, this is Chief Wallace, I like him, he's probably qualified for a 13, but I want to make him a 17 because I like him. That doesn't work in this new framework. But the things that you acknowledged are the things as consultants that we don't just run into here at Waukegan School District, but in corporations, it lurks and it exists too. But this thing bookends it. It makes it extremely difficult to just pull a job description out of thin air, and or to put a candidate or applicant in a position in which they are not qualified.
I don't need the mic, but I just got to go back at you right? And I appreciate that, but did you guys consider, because again, I'm talking about my director of security, right?
You do.
He's been in security.
Ray,
Right.
let me just,
that's what I-
he
go
can't
ahead.
he can't talk about employees, but you trust me and I trust you, yes. Yes.
In that particular role, right, I'm not talking about whether he got a raise or not. What I'm saying is, let me finish the question. In that particular role, we know he's been in security for X amount of time, right? And so although the role may require certain education, have we considered that experience sometimes may supersede the education, right? Meaning that somebody with that experience can actually be better at that role than somebody with the book education. That's what I'm asking. 'Cause that, you know,
It's not a crazy question, actually, Ray, and I'll go around it and say this. If a person is in a job 2-3 years and they're performing at meets expectation level, regardless of what their education says or what the job description says, if you're in that job without the degree or whatever the case might be and you're performing 3 years, just say, it's very difficult for someone to convince me that that person is not qualified to be in that role, right? I mean, you couldn't put me in a role as an MD, right, a medical doctor, and I wouldn't last 2 years. At least I wouldn't have a satisfactory rating. And at some point in time, someone would say, well, that's probably because you don't have a medical degree. But if I'm in that job and performing it, then we really have to ask ourselves, in the spirit of equity, is a master's degree necessary? Is a doctor's degree necessary? Is a Bachelor of Science degree, is that really necessary? As we continue to pressure test jobs for equity and so forth. And that's taking place all over the country. All over the country to get at issues that you're speaking of now.
Okay, and then there's the last thing, and I hope we
said that
also,
last time.
as a district, consider this, right? Because I'm going to go back to that particular position, right? Because a director of security can be doing everything that they're supposed to be doing and can be performing, right? But then when we say results, right, and I look at the schools having so many fights, and there's this going on, and there's this going on. I just want to make sure we don't punish the director because of the things that's going on, and we know security's supposed to control it, right? But then when you have teachers not doing their part, or deans not doing their part, or, you know what I'm saying? I just want to make sure that's not part of this whole process.
No,
Thank you.
That didn't. Good question, fair question, and safety it's everybody's business. It's everybody's job. Okay, so no, we did not even consider that. We didn't even consider performance ratings or reviews when coming up with this.
And so, and again, that's another topic item. So I know it's these meetings in the format of them may not be familiar to the community, and I do understand. So I appreciate the advocacy in that it's here. This is related to a specific topic, which was the proposed salary structure. When we get into safety, security, other items, education, right? We still have a student achievement meeting. Is just because we're talking about this doesn't mean we're not concerned about some of those other things that are being raised. So I appreciate you for raising them. I had Ms. Lindsay, and then I saw writing back. So go ahead, Ms. Lindsay.
Thank you, Mr. Moten and Mr. Harris, for a lot of the information you've already provided. I just have some clarifying aspects. Can you, Mr. Harris, give us an understanding on why 6 years in the position, not prior history or background, but 6 years in the position is that mark in which we decide they move up to the next midpoint?
Because people have.
Yes, if you look at your overall structure, that's a great question, by the way. If you
Thank
look at
you.
your overall question, your overall structure, it's a pretty flat structure, meaning that I might like my job, I may not be looking, I may not even want a promotion, or I may not get a promotion soon. So the only way I'm going to move is laterally within my grade. We broke out those grades in quartiles, and just when we broke them out in quartiles, looking at about 24 years, we said let's do that's how we come up with the 6 years,
So
to say
24 divided
let's
by-
move that person over to show some sort of retention equity for them so that they can grow and move laterally within their range.
Do you find that 6 years is pretty standard across sectors, or it just makes the most sense for this district?
It both and.
Okay.
Both and.
I appreciate that. And then with regard to the schedule, so not all of the grades are listed in this proposed salary structure, so it caps at 23 for what's listed, but we have positions that go all the way to 28. So what is the guidance for HR with regard to 24, 25, 26, and 28? I don't know why there's not a 27.
I think those folks have contracts.
Okay.
And so they would be guided by whatever you work out with them within their contracts, and not typically through HR. That's why they would not be listed here, or should not be.
So to my understanding, the board hires the deputies. I thought that was under the superintendent's purview.
She makes the offer. So Mr. Harris accurately said that our 2 deputies are under contract.
Right.
So again, I don't want to give you another job of scope. If that's something is when we are looking at those salaries, that would be something that he's saying we should instruct. But you did not review those job classifications?
No.
Okay, which is why they're not.
We used them. We just used those salaries to help bookend and give us a minimum for like that grade 10 all the way up to the top of the house, and compress everything in between. But we did not evaluate those jobs or use it as part of this survey or piece of work.
Okay, so then maybe that's a conversation at some point that we need to have, because we've had one of our deputy superintendents have an awesome opportunity come his way, so we're going to be in this scenario. So I just want to be prepared for that.
So
Associate.
Associate, I apologize. My apologies. I didn't mean Dr. Null.
So I think, so my understanding is there are ranges for associate soups. Where you're not going to see ranges is for your deputy soups and general counsel,
it's in
along with
23.
your superintendent.
Understood. Okay. And then with regard to the concerns around those that hit the max, and we are using that 4% as essentially a stipend or a lump sum payment to them to account for any adjustments, are those pensionable earnings? So to clarify, so Mr. Harris is saying no. So if it's not pensionable earnings, essentially it's not going to be factored into their retirement benefits through the TRS system, et cetera.
I don't think so.
Yeah, and I don't like that.
Okay.
I say let's verify that. I think
Okay.
I think we have time. We can go out and consult, because again, it's just like if I'm working as a sub and I see Mr. Vukovic shaking his head, yes, is I still have to claim that, right? And so if I had a second job, even as a teacher, and it's in my last years, they would look at my total compensation. So again, I don't want to take a definitive position as it will or it won't. Let's talk to a pension expert, especially one that deals in the public sector. Regardless of that, personally, I'm not going. The approach is the right one. Typically, people would see the salaries through moving. You don't stay in a role and
Right.
not see any type of movement. And if you do hit that cap, you're capped out. So
That makes no sense.
I mean, I get that aspect, and I work in pension. I think we just want to make sure we have a TRS representative, not just a pension expert,
Right.
but someone specific to this plan and the parameters and what
TRS,
this plan's
absolutely.
definition of pensionable earnings are.
Absolutely.
Because if it is included, I think that would address Ms. Hannah's concern. If they're not, I can't speak for Ms. Hannah what goes beyond that. And then I think to Mr. Edwards' concerns with regard to the job descriptions, just to clarify, because there are certain positions where you're a director, but you're not providing evaluations for certified staff such as teachers. So maybe a type 75 isn't appropriate for that. So to confirm, have those components already been addressed with our current job descriptions in place, or that's something that our superintendent will need to work with our human resources director and work with the board to get that cleaned up?
Both and. We looked at all of these jobs individually, person by well, not person by person, job by job.
Right.
And then no, I didn't want to say person,
Okay,
because
got
you don't evaluate the person, you evaluate the job.
Right, that's right.
We looked at them job by job, breadth, depth, and scope. Do you need a type 75? Do you need this degree, that degree? All of that to come up with what you have there. Now, so to answer your first part of your question, yes, it was considered here. The second part of it, you talked about job descriptions, which is a little different. I do think that there's some room for HR to go into a file or wherever they keep individual job descriptions and make sure that those job descriptions align with A, what the employee is actually doing, and B, align with where we have them profiled and graded.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify to make sure that's still an item that we
Yes,
will want to look at.
we
and
need to
visit.
look at that.
Right, because I agree. And also, again, to Mr. Edwards' point, there's been a huge push ever since, I was in school and I went to college, that you need to have a degree in order to get a job. And so in terms of equity, we have a lot of people who've been in the workforce 20, 30, 40 years, never had a college degree, but the experience is behind that. So when we're looking at it, I just want to make sure that as it's appropriate, we are considering that experience, because if we are saying this is required, but the experience fulfills that, I wouldn't want to be inequitable in our hiring process. So thank you for clarifying that that's maybe.
Ms.
kind of
Lensing,
past that.
because some of the job descriptions have aged, that's why we sat down and went through job by job, person by person, because some people may be in their current role doing something that's not, they may be doing more than what's listed on an old job description.
Yeah.
But based on the process, how we went through it job by job, if they are doing more, then if it should have been a grade 14 or whatever, if you look at the current job description, if it reads out as something that would be a grade 14, based on what was covered in our interviews when we went through and profiled the job, it may be a 15 or a 16, because we wanted to make sure we captured what people were actually doing, breadth,
Okay.
depth, and scope. So I feel very comfortable about this process and where our people reside and where they're graded.
I still had a
I have
member of the
one
public,
more
so
she
one more
wanted
from
to
Ms.
touch
Lindsay.
on that.
Right, so I'm gonna let
She
Ms.
got a
Lindsay ask
question.
hers, and then I'm gonna go out.
I got I got distracted. Oh, just give me 2 seconds. I'll hold it. Let's not belabor the point, and if we can come back to me, I'll try to find what it was.
So,
Yep, we
does
got a
she-
question.
She
Yep.
doesn't have a question?
Yes, she does. She has the microphone. Or not anymore.
Okay, what? And I think this is a Mr. Moulton question. Okay, aside from, Mr. Harris, now, we approved another group of people that were looking into HR. Did they work in tandem with, Mr. Harris? Or are we still awaiting the finished product with them? Because I thought that that's what they were going to be doing, the assessment of HR, I guess they were going to be looking at job descriptions, all that. But where are they? Because we haven't had any kind of follow-up with them. We haven't heard anything about them. And so how are what they're doing coinciding with what Mr. Harris is doing? Good, and where are we with that? You know.
Sure. I'd be happy to answer that question. So that was not a compensation review. That related to systems and structures, policies, and procedures within the Human Resources Department. Human Resources is a lot more than just compensation. So we focused on compensation alignment, specifically with this. That was a different scope that was more comprehensive for the procedures within the Human Resources Department, as well as the job description specific to the Human Resources Department, not all of the non-union positions like the group looked at with this scope.
Okay, so where are we with that?
So, Ms. Hannah, I just want to be clear because I don't know if you directly answered Ms. Hannah's question. So the answer is no. Mr. Harris did not work with the Biddle Group on the audit of HR. These are two different entities doing two different bodies of work at that time, so no. And where we are with that is the board will be receiving the full report in April.
Okay. Okay.
You okay?
Yep.
All right.
Okay, I remembered. Sorry.
No, I just moved the wrong way.
If someone was ahead of me.
I don't know. No questions from the audience at this time. Then go ahead, Ms. Lindsay.
Okay, apologies for my blanking out for a minute. Mr. Moten, sorry. I appreciate that you had noted that there's going to be a presentation, I believe you had commented that there was going to be a presentation to explain the structure and that it was going to be available for new recruits. So
Yes.
is that going to be linked in on online job postings, that presentation to go over salary structures?
Yes, so the goal with this, and this is one of the goals of the HR department currently, is to make sure all this information is online, whether it's forms for current employees, the proposed salary structure, as well as how employee compensation works in the district. So there would be information provided on our website that goes through what we discussed this evening, so that when candidates look at positions in our district or they navigate our website, they'll be able to see that. They don't have to wonder. They don't have to look at a job description and say, where it says a salary is competitive. It'll say it, like in numbers, dollars and cents. So yes, that information will be for prospective candidates when they go to our website, our job descriptions, etc. And it'll be spelled out in a presentation similar to this, but more geared towards a prospective employee.
Okay, because as of 1/1/2025, Illinois is going to require salaries to be posted on job descriptions. So we are on a tight timeline
We'll
for
be
that.
a little ahead of that.
Yes, and then I would like to recommend, because we're hearing from Mr. Harris that this should be reviewed within the next 3 to 4 years, that when this is proposed for board action, that we include the date in which we intend to review it, so that it's not slipping off radars, it's a set date, and then it can be reviewed. Just so we're organized and we're being proactive, that's just my recommendation. And then with training the human resources staff, because they're the ones setting the salary schedule, that makes sense. But when we have individuals going for hiring and we're looking at their qualifications on what makes a good candidate, are we also making sure those hiring for the positions? I know I participated in one where it wasn't HR leading the interview, but it was the department head looking to fill a position within the department. Is this training also going to go to those involved in the hiring process or leading the hiring process?
So we are going to have a process that we're going to train hiring managers on for
Okay.
consistency. Those hiring managers are not going to offer salaries.
Right,
But as
understood.
far as how they navigate the hiring and interview process, and when they get to the point of making a recommendation to human resources, we are going to have a training with some unified documentation on that.
Yeah, and that makes sense, and that's why I qualified that
Yeah.
it makes sense that they're not going to be doing the salaries, but if we're looking at experience and the job descriptions to nail it down, I just want to make sure that's part of the process.
Yes, so that would be a training through certification form. I think what you're referencing is vetting or screening the applicants, so that we know that we're interviewing everybody who's qualified.
Okay, beautiful, thank you.
Thank you. Now, was there still an audience question?
I don't believe so.
Okay. With that, I would like to go to our information items. We have item 5A, which is our safety and security consultant services review. The information has been submitted there. Again, these items are there. I'll go and take each letter item one at a time
Are
if
they
there are.
going to give a presentation? Safety and security?
Not over. These are information items. If you have a question about it or if you want to see it, they can. Mr. Walls is here.
I know.
Right. So I'm saying if there was a question, but they're not going to go through the entire
I just wanted to
presentation.
make sure that,
Well, what I would like to, for the chief, I'm still calling you
I
chief.
know, me
Sorry
too.
about that. But there's a lot of information I think the board need to know, that I don't think you can
Talk in the mic, Jeff. they
expose,
say.
that you can expose to the public for safety reasons, but I think it's stuff that we need to know that you've done through your investigation through our schools, that we need to sit down here as a board.
Yeah. Because we're going to have and just to continue with what Mr. McBride is saying, we're going to have a conversation later, hope you stick around, in terms of the school student vaping in the buildings. And yeah, I'd like to hear your things about your conversation, discussion, concerns and stuff about that.
Mr. Moulton, did you want to say something in regard the executive reports that we're going to be giving those brief overview in closed session? Is that what you wanted
Yes,
to say?
Superintendent. So since a lot of the information provided has to do with building vulnerabilities, we'd like an opportunity to present that information to the board in closed session.
Is that closed session material?
It should be, Ms. Hannah, because.
We have done that in the past with other instances because we are talking about vulnerabilities and
Right,
procedures, Ms. Hannah.
exactly, yeah. Because it's stuff that I think that the public don't need to hear because of safety reasons for our kids, I think, for vulnerability reasons. That's, and I say that because if something that the public hears that he's done to secure the building, that gives the public information to say, well, I know what to do now. So since I heard that, so that's what I'm saying, Ms. Hannah, for vulnerability for the
And we can have
our
one that's
kids,
done
yeah.
to the public that will provide additional context on what things were looked at possibly. But again, the in-depth piece of issues and vulnerabilities, again, that is information that.
Well, I know
obviously
we
the
just
safety
need to
is-
make
Well,
sure that it's closed
The
session
PowerPoint does a nice, has a
If
nice
it's not closed
presentation
session
on the
stuff.
work that has been done
Right.
with Chief Wallace and Mr. Harris. So if you look at the PowerPoint for public consumption there, you will see that there's vulnerability of buildings, gang awareness, professional development for administration, staff, etc. So I do ask the public to please review the PowerPoint. It really does give you a good amount of the work that has been done in conjunction with this partnership.
Ms. Lindsay.
So I think it is pretty standard for this type of information not to be fully expressed in front of the public for a primary reason where, ever since I've been going to school shootings have been going up and up and up. And so if we were to give all of the fine details, we are essentially broadcasting to anyone that would want or has an urge or happens to come to a school to commit such an atrocity, they have access to that information. So in order to safeguard our students and our staff and prioritize that, there's going to be aspects where, yes, we give a summary to the community, but there has to be some elements where we do not, because it would essentially highlight these are where our schools are vulnerable, so anyone that would want to cause harm would have that information to know where to target.
Well, it's, you couldn't explain it no better. Thank you.
So I saw, and the only reason is from time, typically, we'll be trying to do with the information items is go through them. Huh? No, he has it, and it was attached and open for the public. So if there are questions, yeah, we want to, because we still got another meeting, Mr. Harris.
What is this HR recruitment travel authorization?
So Mr. Edwards had a question related to this item, and then we'll move on when we get there.
Yeah, I do agree that some of this information should be private as it talks about the safety of the schools. But outside of that, when we're talking about the gang activity and the rest of that stuff, I think that can be summarized to the public because these are things that the public need to be educated on and things that they need to be aware of as well. And I think when we do that, that kind of like helps the district, right? Because when we say if you see something, say something, if they don't know what to look for and they see something, they ain't gonna say nothing. So although I do think the building security should not be discussed in the public,
Right.
but outside of that piece, I think we do want to know what the chief thinks as it relates to the conditions and the things in our school.
We're gonna, since there's so many comments and questions, we are gonna summarize the information that's shared on the agenda item, just so, we are recording, just so everybody can see some of the scope items that were reviewed and the areas of focus.
Good evening, board members, board president, community, colleagues. We're just going to take a look real quick at some of the work, scope of work. And in the summer of 2022, we partnered with R.J. Harris to come up with some safety-related policies and practices. Some of those deliverables was a complete audit of K through 12. So Chief Walls went to every school in the district and did an observation and did an audit. And some of those vulnerabilities are what we're discussing now. We don't want to make public. One of the recommendations that came out of that, we provided a gang awareness video for all staff to go through. We're also in the process of completing a video module, a second module for that. It's also to share, which will focus on the local gangs. There was an ask by some staff members, bargaining unit, so we put this together. We're going to go forward with another module, which will talk about specifically gangs to Waukegan. Some of the areas of focus was we reviewed organization structure of the safety department and recommended changes, job scope, breadth, and depth. Out of that came the recommendation for additional safety officers at some of our buildings in the district. Also out of that, we created some secure vestibules also at several of our buildings. Additionally, we did upgrades. We had approximately 6 buildings that didn't have cameras at all installed in them. Now that is down to 1. And the work on that will start next week, and it should be finished by in the next week and a half or so. So all of our buildings will have cameras. All of our schools will have cameras. It was an ask by principals. The superintendent heard it and made it happen. So, another thing was the traffic patterns. So we took a look at traffic patterns. We've been working in conjunction with the city of Waukegan to talk about some future traffic patterns at Washington campus, Brookside campus. One of the things that came out of that is we created a bus loading zone on Monroe Street at the high school. So now the buses can pull up right there, kids get right on the bus, they don't walk out into this traffic. So that was one of the things that came out of this. Current focus. In August, we started safety staff regulation, professional development. So we rewrote the safety handbook. We put it in a format that was easily accessible and ready to our safety staff. So they knew the rules, regulations, did the gang awareness. Also, we've been doing some tabletops with various district leadership principals. Chief Wallace has been heading that.
What about your culture and climate individuals? Were they included in the trainings and so forth? Because that if not, there's a piece missing out the chain.
Do want to remind the board as well as the public if we can hold questions till the end of the presentation. Go ahead.
Not at this time, Ms. Hannah.
Well, okay,
They don't fall under my department, so I haven't been, but that's something we will look into definitely in the future. They have partnered with us, we've given them CPI training, so they have gotten that aspect.
but I hear you and appreciate that, respect that. However, the safety staff and the culture and climate individuals kind of intertwine.
Yes, ma'am.
And so I would hope that they would be included in all of this. And when you all were talking and when Chief was assessing, all of that would have been done as well, because you're going to be missing a piece. Your safety officers are going to know stuff that that the culture and climate aren't going to know. And I know I've been hearing that there's a disconnect between safety and the culture and climate.
So the chief did brief every principal, Ms. Hannah, and we've been working with, we've had what they call buddy huddles at one of the buildings, and they meet with the safety staff each day, and they discuss a plan each day at the high school. So that was one of
culture and climate.
Yes, ma'am. That's one of the things we started. So we are trying to work closer and build relationships with climate and culture.
Along with the assistant principals.
Yes.
Okay.
So there has been training, Ms. Hannah. I think you were referring to the tabletops. Is that what you were referring to?
We did do tabletops,
yes,
but
yeah.
also we came up with like doing little huddles where they would get together and discuss today's operations and plans. So I know they're doing that at the high school right now.
Thank you.
You can continue with the presentation, please.
And then you can see the dashboard and some of the things that were addressed. Crossing guard, 100% complete. The safety traffic study, 80%. Environmental and security review, that's 80% done. We completed the zero tolerance policy.
What's that?
That was the policy that came out of reporting. When we came up with how to address staff, when there was staff and student physical interaction. And so there was
So that's just for staff, not for students?
the zero policy, yes, ma'am.
It's
That
for
policy it
staff.
came out of, yes, it came out of the incident.
Yeah, I get it. I get it.
Okay.
But so is that why there is a belief among the educators that they can't even stop a fight?
Can you finish the presentation, then we can come back and answer that question?
Well, it's about the zero clarification for zero tolerance.
That wasn't a clarifying question, Ms. Hannah, and if we holding the rest of the board to the same standard as well as the community, we should as well. You can continue with the presentation, Deputy Wilson. Director Wilson, I'm sorry.
Okay. Like earlier, I spoke to the staff's rules and regulation training, 100% done. Gang awareness, 50% done. Response to critical incident training, we're 70% done with that. So Chief Walls will finish all that up. Wrap up. Estimate.
Yeah, no, we're, well, our contract, excuse me.
You
Thank
can
you
give
for
them the
having me here
microphone.
tonight and inviting me here. We have a 10-month contract, so we'll be complete. Oh, I'm sorry.
And that's just for the people online.
Okay, yeah, no, thank you. First of all, thank you for inviting me back here, or inviting me here, I should say. And it's good to see so many people I know and work with for a long time. This is a 10-month project. Where our contract was 10 months. We'll be completed by then. We'll be completed by then. We're well in the window. I spent a lot of time working with Mr. Wilson. I spent a lot of time working with Mr. Moten. I spent a lot of time consulting with Mr. Harris on these projects, also with your superintendent. I guess as an offshoot, nobody asked me, but I'm going to throw it in anyways. I've been to every school in this district, and I can tell you the staff and the personnel you have, they are safety and security minded. I've interviewed the principals, and in some cases the principals and the assistant principals, and they have the right idea in mind as far as safety and security. Every question's answered with, it's the kids first. And it's very refreshing for me to see that. I thank you, Mr. McBride, Ms. Hannah. What I looked at was, Mr. Harris says, don't give this guy the mic, but I got it now. So what we looked at was vulnerabilities in the schools, and to crack it down a little bit more, which is like breach points. Through my career, especially the last 10 years or so of it, and especially now with consulting, I spend a lot of time examining school shootings, reading reports. I read these reports to see what the breaches were, to see where the problems were, to see where the some of the side comments, what policies were in place, what weren't, what enforcement of policy. Sometimes we find we have good policies, we just don't enforce them. So I look at that kind of stuff. And, kind of from a policy standpoint, if it's a policy that we don't enforce, then we got to review it. Is it good or not good? Let's move it on. That's one of the other things I'm looking for. That's the last piece of where we're at. So there's an overall physical security that we've done at every school. We've forwarded those reports. Invite me back. I'm more than happy to brief it. But in the defense of the schools, and not to defeat what we're here to do, those will be, those will be private sessions. And those materials have been shared with the safety staff. I've also had the pleasure of working with Mr. Nickerson. As a matter of fact, we've been invited back in a couple weeks to present to his crew some of the things we saw in a general atmosphere. So I'll just start rolling if this thing stays in my hand. So I'll give it back to Mr. Wilson. So I'm sorry. Does anybody have any questions of me while I'm standing here?
I think we want to finish
The presentation.
Absolutely, I understand.
Sorry.
Okay.
No, thank you.
And then the next page is the budgetary considerations. And I'll let you guys take a look at that. Part of Chief Walls coming back will be to take a look at all of the environmental things, concerns, and go over with operations. And there'll be a more detailed report on this.
And my only question is, I know one of the recommendations was around staffing. I do know that the board voted on increasing the number of safety staff already in the fall. Is that why we're not seeing it under budget considerations for 2024, 2025?
Yes.
Okay. And I just want that. So this goes back to something that we talked about in the first session. Oftentimes it's said that the board is not responding. The contract with Mr. Walls, Chief Walls, was being responsive. I do want to, on the record, also affirm that safety and security, as you know, Chief, is much more than just secure doors and vestibules. We also want to make sure that our students feel safe and secure in the environment. And so this is a great step at making sure that we are physically safe. I heard something that I don't want to be remiss as the de-escalation training. Yes. I also know that with the same policy that Ms. Hannah was referring to, that came up where staff was afraid of responding, and one of our points was we wanted to make sure that any staff member that wanted to be CPI restraint trained had the opportunity, and that all staff members, regardless of position, would go through the verbal de-escalation training. And so if there is any fallacy that we don't want teachers to intervene when students are a harm to themselves or others, that's exactly what it is, a fallacy. I will say again, and if anybody, I know, I see Mr. Harris over there, chastise me, but again, Brandon Ewing has a problem with with teachers aggressively putting their hands on kids. I'm not gonna say it any different than that. And if anybody has an issue with that, we can have a conversation about it. In the same way that I want our staff to feel safe, and students should not be allowed to put their hands on them as well. So as my grandmother would say, and I think about her this evening, just keep your hands to yourself. So Ms. Lindsay?
I 100% support that sentiment, Board President, because my child has had hands put on her. So I'm glad we're reiterating that from the top of the board. Chief Wallace, I did have a couple of questions with regard to a question or concern Mr. Edwards has posed. When we're training, or maybe it's Director Wilson, whomever, when we're training staff on the gang awareness, is this something that has to just be contained to district staff? Or is it something that we would have an option to essentially broadcast to the wider community? Or is that something that would have to go through the police department itself?
Yeah, so, and that's a great question. So what we did was, earlier this summer, we were tasked to come up with a way to bring gang awareness training to the district. And I remember Mr. Harris, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Moten, Mr. Ewing, about a year ago, we were with the union. And they had asked, and we were in one of these policy meetings, they asked how we could do it, and they asked how we deliver it, to all employees. And so, keeping in mind, and as a matter of fact, I just spoke to Chief Navarro a couple hours ago about some different topic, and we brought this topic into play about doing some awareness training. But what we talked about was we broke it up into modules. And the first module was delivered through, I don't know the name of the company you guys use, but you guys use a company. I went through
Frontline.
Frontline, thank you.
And it's available to everyone in the district.
And so that was the idea. That was a gang awareness module 1. Module 2 is the safety and security staff are putting together a video module, and that's going to deal with within the schools. And then I believe you're doing that next week, I think you told me.
Yes, we finished the script already. We're going to videotape next week.
And then-
De-escalation?
No, this is gang awareness.
Yeah.
Okay, because people are,
As that far of training relates to your question, then the third module will be the police department.
Okay.
And then I spoke to them, they're going to produce one today, but it was the only way to get this training consistently done across the whole district.
Okay. And so when you say across the district, it's also going to be available to parents as well?
The one that the safety department's doing,
Yeah.
we can surely put that on the district website, and
Okay.
they'll be aware.
As long as it's appropriate, because I think many parents are out there concerned about that and how gangs, one method, and please correct me if I'm speaking out of pocket, but one method essentially is to look at students who are vulnerable, who don't have home supports, who are not getting the love and attention from somewhere else. Those are easy targets for gangs to say, I will care for you, I care about what you care about, join us, and then leads down that certain path. So I just want to make sure we're also arming our parents to look for indicators so that they can try to intervene. And I know there's also a Safe Place does gang awareness as well. That could be an additional resource outside of what we're doing for the district. But I'm glad to hear that we're open to providing appropriate information to our families or the community as well.
Yeah,
So,
and they'll-
Mr. Wilson, can I help manage expectations? All right, because I don't want us to under-deliver. So my impression and from what I've seen, the gang awareness video is more geared for staff in our district. I do believe that we need to build upon that to create one for our families in our community, educating them around gang awareness. But the one, and it may be applicable to both, but from my conversations early on and from what I've seen, it was more applicable to staff. And I think if we should even go further, and that may even be another body of work, is how are we educating our students
Yes.
around this,
Yes.
right? So I think there's multiple facets on how we roll this out, but I don't want you to leave here thinking that we're ready to roll something out to parents that I don't believe we're ready to roll out as of yet, but we are ready to start educating our staff around it. And it was one of the requests at one of our union liaison meetings.
Yes, and I appreciate that clarification. I'm glad we're open to expanding on that. I think that even though it's geared toward staff and district members, the information is still going to be helpful for the community. So I'm happy that it's still going to be available, just not tailored to the specific stakeholder group, and that's something we can work toward. So I appreciate the clarification.
Go ahead, Mr. Edwards.
Okay, Chief, I'm gonna have to push back on you a little bit because
Okay.
I get a little frustrated
Yeah,
when we
push-
keep
that's
saying
okay.
gangs. because I think we need to define what those are. As somebody that used to be in the game, GDs, vice lords, and all them, they're not doing anything no more, and I don't think we realize that. As somebody that's out there in the community, what you're seeing more of now is called cliques.
That's right.
Neighborhood groups, right? And so when we're talking about gangs, and we're talking about how we are training for this, right? I'm listening to you guys say climate and control specialist is not under security. Well, we know they used to be deans, so that's why they're not under security. I just had to say that. But why aren't they getting trainings? You see what I'm saying? For me, Mr. Harris said it best. Every staff member in that building is security, so to speak. It's their job to protect those kids. And so this shouldn't be optional. Not even the de-escalation training shouldn't be optionable. Everybody should be mandated to do that. And then the last thing, I got to say this too. And as somebody that do things for the kids, I fight for them. You can call me Kid Cochran, right? Because I'm going to go all out for them. But I hear we talk about, you know, we don't want staff hitting kids. Obviously, we don't. But what have we been having happening in the last few years? It's more kids whooping staff than it is anything. And so as an adult, as a staff member, how do they, if they don't have de-escalation skills,
That's right.
how are they going to stop this kid from attacking them? What they supposed to do, stand there and just allow them to do it? And so what I'm saying to everybody in here, the board, I hope every community-based organization is watching. I hope every activist and advocate is watching. We have gotten too soft when we're talking about these schools and our babies. We keep talking about prison, the pipeline. We keep talking about all of the things that we're supposed to do after the kid gets suspended. I thought we was being proactive. And if we're being proactive, then we should be building things to stop them from getting suspended, to stop them from having police contact. We took the DARE program up out of the district. It started when I was a kid. It started in kindergarten. I learned some of these things by the time I was 2nd or 3rd grade. It's not happening no more. And so to enlighten all of y'all, every year there's different drugs. Every year the street changes. The same people ain't in charge no more. Gangs don't go for the vulnerables no more. They go for the tough ones. They want to flip them. And so what I'm saying is, I'm listening to y'all saying y'all looking at front line. This is what I talk about when I'm talking about education versus real life experience. It don't add up. This is where I encourage the board, teachers, staff, district employees of any kind to come out in the community and talk to people like me that's out there in the streets. I ain't asking you for $1. That's free. But when you don't make time for us, this is why you don't know so much and the things that's going on in the community. I just thought I'd put that out there. Thank you.
Go ahead, Ms. Anna.
Mr. Edwards, can I just respond? So one of the requests for Chief Wallace was for him to help us create a video that's applicable to Waukegan community, right? Not just a general video on gangs. So I do want you to know that that was one of the requests, and so they did take that into consideration when they were looking for what was the best form of education on gang awareness out there. That's number one. Number two, it may have been an error on our part, but I believe it landed as climate and culture is not getting professional development. That is not the case. They are getting professional development. I think Daryl was asked a question in regards to a professional development he was thinking about or et cetera, but climate and culture is getting professional development at the school levels through teaching and learning, whether it's on restorative practices, SB 100, so they are being developed. As a matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, I do believe that the board previously even voted on them going to a conference around restorative practices. And if it hasn't been recently, I know we have done in the past. So they are receiving professional development. So I just want to make that clear.
Okay. And then I'm done. With this part, right? Chief, know I respect him. I've did a lot of work with him. I think I was in your office more than anybody, right? But when we're talking to the community, and this is why I say sometimes we have to break things down in layman terms, because had not I been somebody meeting with the chief, the average chief is not in my community. They're not riding my streets. You understand what I'm saying? So when you telling me that you're going off in an assessment of a police chief, then you give me reason to question, do you know anything? Because the reason why I say that is because the chief is more administrative. We know that. We seeing it right now. We don't even see our Waukegan chief, unfortunately, right? And I'm talking about when I'm in Zion, even when I'm in North Chicago, right? Our chief does not be able, since he's left, doesn't really ride the streets, right? And so what I'm saying is, that's what I'm saying when we're talking to the community, right? We got to look at those officers that's out there on the patrol every single day. Even when I'm talking about the safety staff, that I've said this to you guys before, they should be some of the best paid people in the district. They're not just security, but they're mentors. They're the first ones that the kids see when they walk in those buildings. They're the last one that the kids see when they leave. They interact with the kids more and see them more than the teachers do. So that's what I'm saying. No,
you're good. Ray, you brought up a great point, and just to clarify it and piggyback onto your point, I was brought in to facilitate, not to teach. My days of that are over. I realize the dynamics changed. I've been retired for 2 years. I never professed to know everything. Somebody once came and asked me if it was okay how I liked a chair they wanted to buy. And I told them, I said, I'm not going to sit in a chair. If you like it, it's good. So I get that. I wasn't hired to profess all the answers, but the reason I was hired is to facilitate and put this together. This program has several modules to it. One is an overview module that we can get out to everybody. Number 2 will be the local horizon that they're seeing here. Number 3 is with the police department. And number 4, meet with me after this, and I'll tell you what number 4 is. Okay? But we're delving into people who have real world on the ground experience. Does that speak to that? And like you said, you know me well enough. I'll listen if someone tells me something.
Go ahead, Ms. Hannah.
Okay, I'm going to intertwine the zero tolerance that you all spoke of with the staff and the absence of de-escalation training. And maybe I turn to speak to the superintendent. That has to go hand in hand. If you're going to mandate zero tolerance for the staff, right? If you're going to mandate zero tolerance for staff, then I believe that de-escalation should be a big training for all staff. De-escalation. You can't have zero tolerance, but there's no de-escalation skills.
So, Ms. Hannah, the only reason I'm interrupting is because of time, and I want to reaffirm your point. Chief, Mr. Harris, Mr. McIntyre, as well as other, I believe we have a couple principals in the audience that were on there. Our recommendation as a committee that came before this board when Mr. Wilson recommended is that every staff member, regardless of position, go through de-escalation training. So yes.
Okay,
so
and that's
affirm.
wonderful.
So yes, and then the other piece is the piece around CPI with restraints. Is many teachers, some were not comfortable because of injuries and other things, that they be required to have to restrain students. That was a conversation. So I just want to affirm, for the sake of time, that you are correct. and we all agree that every staff member needs to go through de-escalation training. It is something that I speak to the superintendent about often, and maybe we can provide a report on where we are to progress with, getting
the
everybody
training,
trained.
getting
Yep,
the tra-
understood.
yeah,
But
'cause-
we agree.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, Mr. Edwards, but I got tons of other people who done had their hands up, so I'm going to go back in the corner.
So,
I will.
first thing, I want to echo a number of things that's been said here, but to be clear, as was just said, we've had a few instances of different committees that we've had in the past, and this stuff has been talked about for years. I say it's been talked about for years. I've been an advocate for Mr. Wilson to have more power. I believe that if he is to be the director of security, the recommendations and whatnot that come from his office should be enforced. The trainings sound pretty, but if the trainings are not put in the form of a requirement that staff members abide by, what difference does it make?
That's right.
So for me, I think it's admirable that individuals will speak to trainings, but it needs to be enforced. So I also heard the superintendent mention about the culture and climate specialists and the PDs that they receive. Well, there's a parent right over here in a minute I'm told has something that she wants to say with regards to the topic, right? Because in the topic of gangs being discussed, people stereotype gangs and say all gang members are negative and whatnot. Well, the same thing could be said about different staff members, right? All culture and climate specialists are not bad, right? Some of them are. And those that are should be called out on it. And here we have now one of your culture and climate specialists having the audacity to use her position with the police department and her position as a district employee to literally go to a parent's home and threaten her. Threaten. Right? So for me, that person is not representative of the entire culture and climate specialist group, clearly. But don't ignore it. Let's not make it seem like they're all perfect, because they're not. This individual who threatened this parent was blatant enough to do so on camera. You can't make this stuff up. They allowed themselves to be recorded making said threats. If this individual was abiding by the trainings that you guys are talking about right now, we wouldn't have this situation. So I think it's very necessary that everybody pay attention that this is bigger than just training. It's bigger than just saying something about gangs. Rules are useless if they're not abide by. And what I see right now is individuals who are arrogant enough to think that they can just do and say whatever they want just because they carry a district badge. And at some point in time, we all have to recognize that enough is enough. I will say that seeing Chief and Mr. Harris and that team working on this topic, it gives confidence to certain individuals in the community. Why? Because we feel like credibility exists, right? I say that, but at the same time, I recognize that it's but a step towards. Nothing has been completed. And every district employee around here knows that what I'm speaking to is true. So I want to commend Mr. Wilson for his work and recognize that he needs more support. And that is me echoing Mr. Edwards with that piece. But with all of that being said, I'm telling you all, I'm disturbed by some of your staff members and how they treat these parents and these students. And when it comes to the students, let me just be clear on that as well. I'm not a proponent of students just being able to get away with whatever they want. We just had a meeting over Edith Smith. I told the principal the same exact thing. Just because this topic took place doesn't mean that these students get away with things. They need supports though. We have to recognize when they have shortcomings. That said, my last point would be this. Vaping. Like, this thing is getting out of hand. I don't know exactly what safeguards are being put in place throughout the district to address it, but it's becoming a huge problem. And this is a precursor to drug addiction. and after the drug addiction. So I speak to the school to prison pipeline all the time. This is the type of stuff that feeds it. It starts at an early moment, and then before long we'll call the kids bad, and after they're bad, they're suspended, and when they're suspended, they go to that school to prison pipeline. That's where it happens at. When do we head it off? I think I heard that being spoke on earlier. Preventative measures need to be put in place. But once this system is set up as it is right now, we have to proceed on with doing what we have to do to protect the kids. That's all I have. Thank you.
And I do, as we come to some of the comments, because I know people have been waiting, want to remind the audience as well as the board the topic, as we have Chief Walls and Mr. Harris here, is around the Safety and Security Consultant Services review. Part of their purview was not related to culture and climate. It's come up that we believe that there should be some additional trainings, but this was around looking at vulnerabilities assessments, providing that training and consultation. I just have to refocus, but I want to go back here to individuals that have been waiting. And if you can just state your name for the record, please.
My name is Lakeisha Robinson.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson.
The culture and climate specialist. I'm not sure what type of background checks do you guys do on these people, because I received these threats. This lady came to my home and threatened me. I had to conduct my own background check. And after those threats, my son emailed me and asked me, can I please come and get them from the school, in which I did. In the mix of that, I did inform the school of her background. And after I left the school, talked to the assistant principal and told the assistant principal to keep her away from me and my family, I received another threatening phone call at 1:34 p.m. after I left the school. So I was confused about how did she call at 1:34 p.m. when I already stated to the school to keep her away from me and my children. When I tried to go get an order of protection against her, I discovered she tried to get one against me. And I don't know if y'all know how the courthouse work. They take new clients at 1:30 for order of protection. So it appears that she called me on her way up there, so it could look like when I call her back, it looked like I'm harassing her, but that wasn't the case. She shouldn't have never been at my unit, period. That is what the truancy officer for. She sent threats, she was recorded, and she also called my phone threatening me. I mean, I'm living in fear. She knows what kind of car I drive, she knows my work schedule. If she's capable of doing that and with a background like that, I don't know what she's capable of.
And I do want to say I appreciate you for not mentioning the staff member name. I also want to state is if this is a complaint that relates to your student directly, is that it be directed to the appropriate personnel. So that would be the school principal or Deputy Cesario if you've already dealt with the school principal. But as far as this forum, just because even for your own, and I don't want protection here, different things like that, what you say in the public. Do appreciate you not mentioning names, but that would be the most appropriate place to direct an inquiry based on your student.
Ms. Robinson, Dr. Cesario, can you hold your hand up? He'll help you. When you're leaving, he'll have a conversation with you right now to get information from you.
And then there was another question or comment. Go ahead.
Well, I'm here in support of Ms. Robinson. I came before on her behalf and spoke with several people, including the superintendent, about other safety issues, such as supervision in the classroom when her son's teeth got knocked out. By the way, that issue is still unresolved. His teeth still messed up. Claim unaddressed. That's a sidebar. But I want to really give a further narrative, because I was at the meeting with Ms. Robinson and Mr. McIntyre, along with Mr. Russell, who was here. He had to depart. Imagine this. Someone comes to your home, and there is a doorbell that has a camera on it. And this person comes to your door after not following the protocol that you set with the school on how to get in contact with you during an emergency, threatens to release, quote, public information to your neighbors since they can't get in touch with you, then leaves, then comes back and says something equivalent to, I bet she won't like it if we send them back to John Lewis. Now, why is that problematic? This person knows that school is so horrendous, so bad, my God in Zion, that can be weaponized on camera as a threat because you haven't answered the door. And she don't know what the reason why you haven't answered the door, nothing. Making assumptions, but has the bodacious enough to say that on camera. Then proceeds to say, well, since you haven't answered the door, I guess we're going to have to call the police and get them charged for trespass. Threatening to weaponize Waukegan Police Department on middle schoolers. That's your culture and climate personnel at Edith Smith. First name start with the fourth letter of the alphabet. I'm going to end it there.
Thank you.
Y'all figure it out.
In regards to safety and security, I heard you, President. I'm going to try.
I appreciate it.
Hiring process, background checks, and possibly so regular because things happen in our lives, right? Where, for instance, I've driven for Uber. Every year, without any question, a background check is done. You may have to do more diligence within scope of that because we're still in a pandemic climate, a cloud. People can be offset and find themselves in positions or doing things that would become unreasonable for them to carry out, professional careers and things of that nature. I'm the emergency contact. I received a phone call from the person as well, but everything was just so out of scope. The student handbook, for instance, discloses things about controlled substances, right? But the board policy mainly is focused on tobacco and things of that nature. We talk about safety and security. Your verbiage, your directives are not quite there. The vaping also, I received an email from my little brother who's a freshman and explained that because the teacher suspected marijuana use, that security was called and students were escorted from their classroom to the metal detectors. And my brother's narrating that, I know it wasn't suspected that I was, no one, he wasn't pointed out, which means that they just herded kids in any capacity. And he said it's the second time it's happened. And this was at the end of February, so it's right in scope of we're not hitting it just yet, right? End of February, I got this email from my brother. And he knows why we use email. Sometimes we use text, sometimes we use email. I've taught him this. He had a really bad experience from District 50, something similar with gang activity, gun violence, and drug use. He's at District 60 now. He's ready and telling me what's going on. Again, they're being escorted downstairs to go through the metal detectors, but only to really have their book bag removed from their person, because then their book bags are being searched. Mind you, marijuana use, metal detectors have nothing to do with each other when you suspect some type of controlled substance use. And if the teachers are, being trained or considering how to secure classrooms, right, from controlled substance use, you have to pay attention to who's doing what so that you just don't hurt certain people. And my brother is not someone, even I'm all up in his business. He's not a student who would or is, because I got that. But why is he experiencing this twice? And he's saying, and in the email, I'm just like, he's like, yeah, I went to the metal detector, it didn't beep. But I'm just like, bro, you're talking about marijuana. Why are you being taken out of the classroom to do that? And he's like, he asked the security, why are you checking my bag? Not only she checked, she left it open. He said, he's trying to close stuff up. Why are you checking my bag? She said, are you the one with the weed? He's like, no, what are you doing in my stuff? That is illegal. So you talk about safety and security, but also for the district not losing money for inappropriately searching students and their belongings, incriminating them or making them feel. He's a black boy. This was just at the end of the month, February. And he's like, I'm gonna try to get the name of the security, personnel. It's just, I'm worried about him, and I'm asking him to cooperate so he doesn't upset an adult who shouldn't be doing what they're doing to students on the clock.
So I do appreciate that message, and I know Deputy Cesario is also in the back. So if there are,
Can I interject real quick? If y'all are serious about this vaping situation, I'm speaking as a parent that they know. I had to call Leeds. I had to get my son in Leeds. That's a missing person report situation for the situation with this THC. If y'all are serious about making sure that the risk is minimized, y'all need to talk to the city council. I submitted some reports to them, yesterday and public comment, I made sure they got it by email. But y'all gonna have to put the weight on them as well, so that way this city doesn't make that legal to people 18 and up, because one of the people on that board said people 18 and up should be able to buy it. If they could go to war, get the death penalty, that was the conflation. It just because it's legal doesn't make it morally correct. And just because it's legal, it might mean it need to be illegal. Everything isn't about business. But there's a business being had here, and 18-year-olds are buying this stuff for y'all students. Some of y'all don't know when students are high in y'all class. I bet you. So I just wanted to throw that out, and I'm sorry, but it's important to me. Nobody wants to go through what I went through last year with a child that you can't find, and when you do, you find out that some THC mess told him to go baptize himself in Lake Michigan. Okay?
Mr. Vukovic?
Yeah, just as somebody that knows just a little something about the Illinois Open Meetings Act, this subject would actually be allowable in closed session under exception number 8, school building security and security procedures. So, you know, that kind of thing, you should get the basics out of it, but then once you can come public, you need to let the public know as much as you can. So thank you.
And that is the plan. Mr. Edwards, final comment?
Yeah, I just want to say this. When you spoke, you know, I listened to you talk about groups and teams that got together and talked about this information and things of that nature. And I'm directing this to you, board president, because you stated a gentleman, Mr. McIntyre, name. And my issue is you have more than just him in the community. And for something like this, not nan board member, not nan employee in a district reached out to somebody like me who does a lot of events for kids, who comes to this board meeting consistently speaking about the issues of the kids and what we're going to do with the kids and how we're going to protect them. What I'm simply saying is, and I'm glad y'all included somebody, but who's ever in charge of this goes back to what the problem is always in, a lack of communication with the people in the community. Somebody like me would have loved to be a part of this discussion, because I guarantee you some of this discussion, we wouldn't have some of them things on there, because I could have gave you the clues to them. So now that them women spoke, those mothers, I hope you guys are listening to them. And this is why we don't need police in our schools. You're talking about school shootings? Well, you go look at the data and the research. Most of them is happening in the grade schools, right? Where's the police at in there? They're not. Because they're not there to do what y'all want them to do. That's not their job. Their job is to arrest criminals. So if you put them in the school with our kids, they're going to treat them like they're criminals.
So I do appreciate all the comments. Again, for the individual student matters or even the personnel complaints, we do have Deputy Cesario that is there. I also want to talk about committees. This was a very public process. There were multiple people. Those were just the individuals in the room that I saw who participated in the committee. But your point is heard, Mr. Edwards. But again, when we do our committees, we reach out to a diverse group that is representative, and if you would like to list the names of the individuals who participated, we can certainly do that. There is a bunch of items, but all typically relate to purchases. I know Ms. Hannah had a question on B. I'm gonna give you that one question, and then
we'll look at it.
Okay.
Later.
So,
but I do want to make a comment about all of the furniture purchases.
Go ahead, Ms. Hannah.
Okay, we are purchasing a lot of furniture, and I thought about this when I was looking at the agenda. Okay, have we purchased furniture for all of our schools at this point? Or are we're not going back to buy twice for one school? We're not doing that.
Ms. Hannah,
I'm-
we'll give you a list of all schools. I mean, because I don't want him to give you off the top of his head, right? We'll give you a list of all schools that we have purchased furniture for. But what I can tell you is that we have not, and LeBaron, correct me, we're not purchasing double of what we have. Like, we're not replacing furniture that we bought 3 years ago and taking that out and putting new furniture in. No.
No, yeah, I know. I meant where we buy like let me pull Whittier School. Okay, you got classroom furniture purchase. Have you bought Whittier School furniture within the past 5 years before? Okay, that's the question that I'm asking. So, and what I'm trying to get at is, when are we going to be done purchasing furniture for the schools? Because we've been doing that. When are we going to be done and being able to move on to something else?
Good question. We will come back with a grid on what schools have had new furniture and what does that potential timeline look like based off budget, need, etc. We can't answer that right now, Ms. Hannah, but we will come back with it.
Well, did you have a final question?
Sorry, super fast on that. In that, can we just note if it's part of the school improvement plan or if it was part of the site-based budgeting, just to tie it out, if it's already been approved and this is just us now paying for what we've approved?
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you. You captured that, Mr. Moulton? Thank you.
All right, with that, I'd like a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion.
Motion by
Second.
Ms. Hannah, second by Mr. Riddle. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Meeting is adjourned. If we can take, try and be back by 9. Excuse me if you can.
9 o'clock.
9:07.
We talked about it a few years ago, and I thought they said they were going to be stocking it at all the schools.
I'd like to call to order the Tuesday, March 19th, 2024 Waukegan Public School Student Achievement Committee
You
meeting.
had to use it?
If I can have a roll call, please.
Mr. McBride. Mr. Riddle.
So if you have further questions.
Present.
Ms. Hannah.
Hello?
Sorry.
Ms. Gonzalez. Ms. Fabian. Ms. Lansing.
Present?
President Ewing.
We do have a quorum. 5 out of the 7 board members are present. Ms. Gonzalez and Ms. Fabian are absent due to conflicts. We do have one presentation. I am going to take the information items. I'm going to try and go through those quickly. We do have staff who've been waiting, so I want to get them done before we go into the vaping conversation. So item 3A, approval of the February 20th, 2024 minutes. Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Riddle. Second by Mr. McBride. Any comments, questions, corrections to the minutes? All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Minutes are approved. I'm going to take each item. Item A, renewal of respondability. B, renewal of super eval tool.
Yeah, I want to know about, you know, when I brought that forth, Mr. President, to the board about the super eval, that was not intended for the administration or the teachers, but that was specifically for the betterment. It's a tool for for superintendents, and I don't know if this is how the super eval is being used. You know, and I guess you all tailored it where it would be able to be used with just staff.
So good evening, Board President, board members, superintendent, members of the community, colleagues. And so it can be used for district, for the district leadership team. And so we've been using that as an evaluation tool to put in goals. There are a number of components that we address,
Right.
and they're self-reflect. So you're very familiar.
I'm
with
very
it.
familiar
It
with
can
it.
definitely be used for superintendents.
That's what
Right. So what as a team, we were looking to purchase it to actually expand what we were doing with respondability. Respondability was really tracking the day-to-day, weekly, monthly tasks, and then the super evalu was where we're housing our evaluation.
Right. Now, I appreciate that, and I'm glad that you all could use that, dual purpose and stuff. And the way that I learned about it was through ISB and the webinar and we were talking about superintendent's evaluations, and this was the tool that was being talked about. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how tough it is. The questions, right? We create those questions, or are the questions preloaded for the self-evaluation? It's a in the weeds question, but it just will help me, Deputy Cesario.
Go ahead. I'll let.
Hi, good evening. Was the question, President Ewing, around the self-assessment that administrators do? in
Or
super
yeah,
eval?
so I'm looking at their super evaluation, right? It's an outline of annual goals. So you input those annual goals, correct? And then it says that the person in this, if it was the superintendent performs a self-evaluation, right? Is that based on where she would grade herself towards those goals?
Yes.
And then the board review and evaluation of the superintendent. So again, you may not be able to answer this question, but I'm sure as I was able to go to the website and quickly see, there are multiple ways for multiple evaluators to be able to input scores or information.
Yes.
And then it's a place to consolidate evaluation data instead of having to manually calculate it. And then you would do the evaluation and the final review. So superintendent, I'm comfortable. If you're comfortable, and I'm not suggesting that we change anything, from my understanding, we've already gone to a digital format for the evaluation tool. We were just using Google Docs to do exactly what this is doing. So if there's a way to marry the process, if it really is just a way to place the information, I would be comfortable with it, or we can keep it on Google Docs, but we can take that conversation offline. For this evening, this is about just renewing the service, which is there, and you may not answer, a takeaway would be, is there a cost if we wanted to use it, for example, an additional cost if we wanted to use it for the board or the superintendent? Because I see that even the board can do self-evaluations and that type of thing on the super evaluation tool.
Yeah, there's not an additional cost. Currently, we do use it for, as Dr. Cesaro mentioned, a lot of our district level administrators, but it can be used for anyone in the district that's at the district level. So
thank you. I appreciate that. Item 5C, Oakdale Professional Development Request. That information is there. Go ahead, Ms. Lindsay.
This is just for both C and D. For clarification, it says it will work to support the SIP goals. So that to me is indicating it was part of the SBB, and this is a development that was already approved via the budgeting process. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, were you asking?
No, I mean, I'm just.
All right.
I'm
Yes, it was.
clarifying to make sure.
Yes, it was.
I'm a huge proponent of the Ron Clark model. I see it do really great things, so I'm excited to see more schools are looking into this.
Thank you. We are, if we took D.
Yes, they don't need to be here because I think that's what they.
Again, they don't want to present. These are all information. So they're here in case the board has a question, but we do not need to go through a presentation or PowerPoint.
Right.
Oh, sorry. One additional piece is that Ms. Fabian's not here, but I believe she's been a continued advocate that we are not seeing the forms attached. And I believe it was a request even in the student achievement and operation meetings for those who are going to attend, for showing that these are the number of days they've been out of district, et cetera. So those aren't attached to this.
We usually move forward and do that with the next piece, but if the board makes that request that you want all that information
Eduardo,
in advance.
Not Ms. Lindsay, I thought and I could be wrong, but I thought the conversation was that we couldn't do it with the student achievement the way Board Docs was set up. Was that not that piece?
You can do it as an attachment.
As an attachment.
The issue was with Ms. Hannah likes to see which budget
okay, that was the budget piece.
So that was that aspect.
But again, so that's just if we the request and the ask, and it has come up a couple times, is that when they see it, that information be included, so they have all that relevant information and that the form is completed fully. Yeah. All right. So now.
Yeah, that's not a problem.
But they want that even at the student achievement meeting.
And that's not a problem.
Perfect.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, we're at renewal of Achieve 3000 and Smarty Ants for grades K through 10.
And all of these renewals, I'm not going to do anything except that if in a future meeting, we'll be able to come back and say, could you show us some results of the Achieve 3000? I'm just picking stuff
Sure.
up, right? Or the renewal of Alex. Show me some positive results from these, because they cost money.
They do cost money.
And, we want to make sure that
Agreed.
we are, that we're getting our money's worth, but not, and when I say that, I mean from students improvement.
Yes.
That's what,
Where it's applicable, we can show it. I mean, when I say where it's applicable, some of them are point in time. They're not used regularly, and some are. So where we can show usage for some, where they're not taking a pre-assessment and continually using that, so we can't say they grew from point A to point B. But in others, they're just a diagnostic tool for a point in one time. But so for all of them? Okay, so all the data, the relevant data that you're asking for is in the PowerPoint, and between now and the next meeting, if you have any further questions and like any more information, we can provide that.
Yeah, I'll ask.
Yep. But we've been vetting a lot of these, and we mentioned this. I think it's important to note this very briefly, that through the Learn platform, just not only the usage, but also the effectiveness, because we want to reduce the number of programs that we're using to be more intentional and strategic with their use. And so we're taking that down to the school level as well. But we do also want to offer a variety of tools for teachers and for students to use. So we don't want to make the list too small, because there are some students and groups of students and groups of teachers that may find certain tools are more useful to them than others may be.
Right. I just want to that's
Yes,
part of a
yes.
board member's
It's a,
job.
of course
to
it is.
Evaluate
Yep, of course it
programs
is.
and
Thank you.
stuff.
Yep, absolutely.
I'm just going to make a brief comment as a parent of younger children that use several of these tools, such as, Dreambox and your Smarty Ants. Parents can have their kids log into their Chromebooks to use it not only for their required reading minutes, but also additional activities even over the weekend. So parents, if you're not doing that, I'm going to encourage that you, if there's going to be screen time, to maybe leverage some of this as well, because there are games, there's interactive pieces.
absolutely, yeah.
And I totally understand. I'm on your side. As long as we're constantly keeping an eye to make sure it's impactful, we're good to go. So I'm glad that it's linked in the information, so we can follow up with questions after.
Yes.
All right. And the main reason why I'm going through these is, one, they're renewals. Two, they have supporting information. If there are further questions, they can be asked. What I do want to is get to the conversation around vaping. So if we can continue to scroll. So like I say, H, renewal of Expeditionary Learning. I, renewal of CAMI. 2 computer labs for CTE. I just want to highlight that. Renewal Hand to Mind, K-5 materials. Again, I'm proud of those efforts, is because we talk about being able to put, even though a lot of things are going online, we still want our students to have actual things that they can touch, feel, play, look. And so you will see those things continue to come forward. I hope that this board and future boards will continue to approve those items. Expansion of queue management, GLAD professional development, internet service provider and fiber connectivity, or E-rate. Whittier,
What is O, Mr. President?
queue management. You want to briefly touch on that?
Yeah, sure. So that is the system that's currently used at the Welcome Center to take appointments, and it's been, Eric's here, he can speak to it a little bit more, but it's been very successful, and we're going to expand its usage to other departments. Do you want to? Go ahead. Yeah, it's been in place for a year now over at the Welcome Center. It's really helped manage the lines and help spread it out. Instead of 100 people showing up at 8 in the morning and waiting there all day, it says come at 8, come at 8:15, come at 9 o'clock, come at 9:30. It's the same company that does the Illinois Secretary of State. So if anybody's had a 16-year-old lately that had to get the driver's license like I have, it's the same system where you go and make an appointment through there to help separate the times. It's really helped with the line management.
Okay, thank you. I just didn't know what that was. Thank you.
Good question. Whittier Elementary School professional development was item R. And then we have item S, which was the Smith IB training head of school.
What does that mean?
So we want to create a full continuum of the international baccalaureate programming in our district. So currently Whittier is right on the verge of becoming a school. So we want to have a middle school and eventually a high school. So this would be the training for the head of school or the principal to really start getting in that mindset of what it entails and what they'll have to do and how they'll have to work with their team to go through that. Very similar to what Whittier, actually Jennifer went through and the other leadership there as well. Yes.
Sorry, super fast. So I'm just wanting to make sure we're using all of the resources that we have. So after our principal at Edith Smith goes through this, I'm anticipating that Whittier's already said will be a resource for additional questions as we've gone through it, right? So that we're helping ourselves anticipate issues and expedite that process so they can get
Since
there.
the onset of the work that we've been doing with IB, they've been meeting as a collective group and sharing experiences. And Whittier has been at the forefront of this, and so they've been really leading this, along with Gladys, so that work has been ongoing, and we share the wealth. We ensure that we're doing that.
Beautiful, thank you.
Thank you. And now we have a brief presentation and then discussion. So, if we go through the data points, board members and community members, if you will write down any questions that you have and save those until the end.
Let's rock and roll.
All right. Well, good evening, community members, colleagues, board president, superintendent, board members. I have the distinct privilege today just to share a little bit about clearing the air of vaping. Now, some of the data that I want to share with you guys is as of March 15th. So the referrals data that we'll be discussing today is as of March 15th. Now, the purpose behind this presentation is to really look at a 3-year comparison of our referrals that we've been receiving from vaping. And what I mean by vaping, I mean we took referrals of students that either been caught with the possession of or actually been using, that got caught using itself. Okay. Now, I do want to say this. This challenge that we have with vaping, it is not a Waukegan problem. It's rather a Waukegan challenge, a Lake County challenge, and a nationwide challenge, to say the least. Right now, I know some of the data that I was able to retrieve and some of the information that I was able to go ahead and retrieve was Lake County has a biannual survey that is given in Illinois, and of which here in Waukegan we're slated to have this survey now in April. We're going to be involved in this survey in April of this year. In the survey that was taken by Lake County, 19 out of 22 high schools and 40 out of 49 high schools were a part of this survey. And what was interesting for me was that despite that the alcohol and e-cigarettes and marijuana is illegal under the age of 21, the large percentage of middle school and high school students have been using this substance abuse within the past 30 days when they took this survey. That was really interesting to me. And what was more interesting to me, if you go to the next slide, please, that access to vapes, access to any other e-cigarette or tobacco is really, according to the data that in this survey, most of how the students are able to get these are coming through their peers and not by stores. It isn't a surprise to me. I've had the privilege of being a climate and culture specialist for close to 8 years, and it was very fascinating always to see how students were able to retrieve this, and they're not even old enough to buy it. However, most of the time they got it from their peers. Now, when we were looking at the data, making these 3-year comparison here as a district of this, you can see for yourself, no, you can go to the next slide, it's okay, yeah. You can see for yourself that from 20, I guess this is purple, mine is blue, but your colors are off. Your purple, the purple marking is 21, 22. You can see the data there and compared to 22, 23, and now where we're at as of March 15th at 23, 24. There has been a decrease in referrals coming in regarding vaping. Now that's 134 referrals that came in difference. If you go to the next slide. Once we got those total numbers, we broke it down into elementary, middle, and high school. And if you notice, that 3-year comparison, the numbers continue to go down, which if you look at the middle school level, there has been the most amount of decrease when it comes to vaping itself. Go to the next slide, please. We went further with that, and we broke it down by school. by school. And one thing that the data does not show up there is that district-wide 5th grade where we had where we had the most amount of decrease when it came to referrals and vaping. Excuse me. In middle school, 6th grade was where we had the largest drop as well, of 22 referrals. And in high school, it was the 10th graders that had the highest drop as well. Now, by me saying that, I want to make sure that I'm very clear in this. We have a big challenge ahead of us as a board, as a community, when it comes to vaping. I am going to share currently some things that are in place that we are doing. Nevertheless, it needs to be stated that although our numbers have dropped, that doesn't necessarily mean that we don't have a challenge in front of us. And I shy away from saying a problem, and I shy away from that because if I just say it's just a problem, then I'm really not having a growth mindset about this and not thinking beyond what's in front of us. Because I believe really strongly that our students can do so much more. And we have to be, I think somebody alluded, I forgot who alluded to this, but when it comes to being proactive about things. So some of the things that we have in place that is addressing at each level, at elementary, middle, and high school level, I'm going to go ahead and just go over this, and then I'm going to share with you some of the things that we're looking forward to do. At the elementary level, I know of some principles that when a child has been caught with or has been using it or been in possession of some kind of vape pen, I know that some principals have really utilized restorative practices in that, where the child is being educated and they have some time to reflect and put together a presentation, or they put something in writing as so they can learn the harm that it could have at elementary level. I also know that for parents or their guardians, they do provide education and materials about vaping, because oftentimes a lot of parents don't understand what it is or what can it do, or what does it even look like, because it changes all the time. It seems like there's a different color, a different, you know what, that should have been a good idea. I should have brought some that I've confiscated in the past so you guys can see how a variety pack that we have. But nevertheless, they're changing constantly. In middle school, through the health curriculum, I know that they cover the effects of vaping, both marijuana and tobacco, in their curriculum itself. I know that NICASA as well, they currently are in all of our middle schools, and they are supporting us with this. During the 6th and 7th graders, I know that they speak about the effects of vaping. I know they talk about the concept of addiction and peer pressure. I know that NICASA is also running a youth advisory committee, and this is a mixture of students who are part of the committee and those students who have found themselves, mixed up with, or been caught with, or have been doing vaping as well. And this committee, they try to do a better job in bringing awareness of the dangers and the impact of vaping itself. In the high school itself, I know that part of their curriculum in the high school is they cover all the effects of it. They go over health implications and how that could lead to addiction and how it could really destroy a student's mind and body. Students participate. Those students that have been caught with vape pens or in current usage, I know that the high school has been utilizing videos and modules through Navigate 360 to help educate the students. I know that with that, the CYN counselors have been a part of helping to bring some kind of counseling to these students who have found themselves to be addicted. In fact, one of the statistics that I just read, nationwide, the FDA put out that 1 in 4 students that are actually using vapes, they use it on a daily basis because they're so connected with it. Now, with all that being said, this doesn't shed light. Really, these are all the data that we shared. What you saw with referrals really is the ones that we actually catch, or the ones that are actually is right in front of us, and so referrals written up and brought to our attention. I'm sure that there's many students that are using it, not because they want to, but they're at a point where they're really addicted to this, and that's and that's a problem. No, it is a problem, but there's also a challenge that we need to go ahead and face with it. Okay, so let me just share a couple of things, what we're doing, our next steps. I have a meeting tomorrow with NICASA, actually. And one of the things that we're interested with NICASA is having a program, a 4-week program, where if a student is caught with this, they could go through this program and they'll go through decision-making skills, emotional, peer pressure, addiction, and vaping program with that. I think that's good, but one of the things I'm more interested in is much more proactive approaches to what we're being engaged with in our community, and that's something that I'm really interested in. I have a meeting set up with the Regional Substance Use Prevention Integration Center on April 4th to discuss what are some preventative measures we could potentially speak about and look into, because we have a lot, not only as a community but also as a county and a nation, but I'm more concerned about our kids for the moment. Some other things that I'm looking into is Too Good for Drugs, a curriculum. I know that this is an elementary curriculum that's going to be during our summer school program. And last but not least, NICASA, Stay at Home, Stay Out of My Room initiative. There's a free resources for parents, and what I found that to be really interesting is that not only NICASA would educate the family and show them this is what vaping looks like, this is some of the things that you need to look out for. They actually put together, from my understanding, I have never gone through it myself, it's free. You go into a room, they hide the vape pens and allow the families, they coach the families how they could find or just go through the room itself. And what I think is what we really need is our parents to really be asking questions about their kids, just engaging their children about the dangers and the impact of vaping itself. I know that this data is what we have currently as of March 15th, but at this point, I've shared with you what we have, 3-year comparison, what we have right now, and what we're looking into doing. Questions? Yeah, I got questions too.
So I'll start with Mr. Edwards, and then I'll go to the back, and then I'll come up to the board.
I'm so glad you guys put this presentation on, and I want to really piggyback off of what you just said, the last piece of it. When we talk about the schools being too soft, y'all, if you think Senators, and I love the education portion of it, I love it, but y'all, we got to put the monkey wrench down. Because just because they go through this training don't mean they're going to stop. So I'm going to challenge this board. What you do is, you got NICASA, you got those other entities involved, which is a beautiful thing. First time they get caught vaping, send them home. And when they have to come back and go through that program, you make that parent go with them. You make it mandatory for the parent. At some point, we got to start holding these parents accountable. And if we put some pressure up on them, because no matter what we teach them in the school, if they going back home and they get to do whatever they want to do, that teaching's in the school is mute. Now I'm all with, and I get it, but I think we run away from these things because now diversity, equity, and inclusion is so popular amongst everybody. And so every time we discipline a black kid, everybody falling out. Well, I don't want y'all making it easy for my black kids, because I want them to know in the real world there's laws. Right. And that every time you do something, you got to be held accountable, right? Everybody's not going to roll the carpet out. So when we looking at this vape, right, I talked with the chief, I know that when the kids come through, we got metal detectors there, right? Yeah. The metal detectors don't pick them up.
Yeah.
They don't. And so one of the things that we learned when we was in the school and we was doing the pilot program, and I'm sorry, but I'm going to say it. One of the biggest issues is our safety is standing in the hallway while they ganged up in the bathroom. Nobody is saying nothing. Nobody is doing anything. So although I appreciate this data, it's so off. Because now, and I'm glad he mentioned it, what about the kids we don't catch? What about the referrals we don't write? Because now our staff is so frustrated because we're not doing that, so they just throw their hands up.
That's right.
So I'm just saying, y'all, at some point when we're talking about this, we got to figure out how to challenge these parents and how to get them involved and trying to create some spaces where we are educating the parent about this vape stuff. So that the parent can also know too that just because a 4-week program, listen y'all, we got to get outside the box. These kids are different. I'll be glad when everybody know that. They different. Never seen nothing like it, and I'm 46, and some of y'all are older than me. Times have changed, and so have our kids. And so these basic rules we using, they're just not working no more. So we need to go back to the drawing board, and we need to relook at some things. I appreciate us protecting the kids from kicking them up out of school and things like that, but y'all, they know. They got it in their mind. They hearing the adults talking, and parents don't care because school from 7 to 3:30 is a break for them, so they care. We got to put some pressure on these parents.
Hello, board. I'm someone who had interest in cannabis or the legalization of such in 2019 and dabbled in courses at Oakton Community College. And I want to say the general public in all facets, including those who partake legally, whether they're adults or dispensary, no one knows. I'm taking pharmacology courses. We don't know. Excuse me for the weed man and dispensary and or legalization are two different things. Big Brother has it now.
Absolutely.
It's not the same. No, even parents who will still be rolling up, I guess, and enjoying their time, what your kids are getting from these smoke shops now everywhere is not the dispensaries. It's smoke shops that we've let the city of Waukegan put everywhere. With the they signs are so attractive. You can buy something that looks like Sour Patch Kids, but it's called Stoner Patch Dummies. And instead of 2 eyes or whatever, they have 1 eye. They stole the likeness, these horrible distributors, right, that are trying to get around but get that money that even the state's trying to get right now, and then play with this R3 money that's coming back into some of these places beyond just Nakasa. Like the police, they've gotten R3 money. They're supposed to be restoring and helping our youth people with this issue. It's been here. In 2019, the Illinois School Board Association put out something for the school board to actually change or revamp its policy so you can get ahead of it. In 2019, I was just looking at it. The Illinois Compound Statute 105, 527 through 13, whatever, I'll email whoever, said you have to make things appropriate as far as children. You have to teach them before. You don't penalize someone who didn't know, period. Especially when you invited them in the door and said, come here, you're safe, we're a place for education. Impossible. I'm so frustrated. My little brother, the freshman, right? District 50, Illinois, state of Illinois at this point, right? Really, really crazy stuff happening there. And those people have privilege. They have the means to help their kids, right? Some parents are struggling with their own substance use and abuse. So it's not likely you can force them to stop their children from what they can't stop themselves from as adults. But you still are welcoming our students in, saying, hey, this is a safe place, we got you. But this is where they're actually interacting and sharing it and so forth and so on. The policies don't even match the climate yet. And things have changed, and they've changed a long time ago. And it's not the kids being different, it's us not being understand that things have changed. Again, including that dispensaries sell hermaphroditic plants. No one knows that. It's just the fact that they want to make it so strong and good that adults, become dependent on it or, go to the dispensary all the time. But then they made it where someone challenged them and made the Delta 8 and 9 products that are at the smoke shops. You can buy pre-rolls, you can buy flour, you can buy the gummies. Make a mistake and eat candy that you think is candy and it's not. To eat something, does anyone know what a Sour Patch Kid looked like? One of those. Hours, you are not out for hours, but then kids are like, I don't even know what that was, but maybe I need to do it again just to see, maybe, because that was real confusing and weird. Another kid got it from their parents, maybe some out of the drawer, or just I went to the smoke shop and usually I could just, maybe I was looking for rolls or something. It's you guys are way behind, and it's so crazy because it's gotten so close to, me in scope of, just trying to be responsible for my youth family in some capacity, that if we don't stop considering the fact that we need to educate ourselves, everybody, the whole community, then unfortunately the government is just going to do what they did with the opioid crisis, if you will, right? They took one thing out and they brought another thing in. Legalization, right? The feds aren't going to touch it just yet because they're letting the states all mess up and just make a mess of everything. It's about money and business. These grants, even that's come through, no one knows. And NACASA, I doubt that anyone on their staff is actually prepared with the information to teach our kids.
Right. At this point.
I'm going to try to make it succinct. She said something that's important. I recommend to you all the same. First of all, I'm going to say this, and I hope certain people, Durant's, hears this. He doesn't work for the district. Y'all letting the Lake County Health Department get off real easy. SAMHSA is a racket. As it stands, it's a racket, this mental health first aid situation, in which they talk about substance abuse, but then there's nothing to redirect anybody. It's just, how do you triage in the moment of crisis? I'm not stupid, okay? So we triage you having an event, it's probably caused by cannabis, then we send you off somewhere where they get to monetize your crisis. And there's no solution afterward. But going towards solutions, as a parent that had to do this, I'm recommending to you all to wholesale buy some drug testing kits and give them to the parents that have enough wherewithal and care to pursue due diligence to test their kids. Drop them. So that way we can find out if they're using this secretly, okay? I like the fact that you all mention these, contests or whatever, because what you're creating is counter propaganda. I understand. I'm going to say this. Some people going to shudder. Ooh, she said it. I study our current condition. I have come to the conclusion we are in a system of racism, white supremacy. Some of y'all may not agree. Unfortunately, the people in charge want to dull all of us, particularly people who are not white. They use substances to do it. That includes alcohol. And would you look at the migration of it? We've gone from alcohol, we've gone to opiates, we've gone to gambling in less than 50 years. And now they found a magical way to legalize cannabis. Cannabis, peyote, and other substances that came from plants used to be things that were done during a rite of passage when you were under the supervision of your elders in more natural conditions. But we live in capitalism, and nothing's natural in that. Okay? I'm going to end my turn with this. I pray somebody listen to me. I've recommended 2 people so far that can counter this situation with information that's relevant and right. Done relevantly. Dr. Obari Cartman. O-B-A-R-I Cartman.com. He actually could help with the gang situation too. But he teaches these hip-hop things where he talks about the lyrics. Y'all have to combat popularity when it comes to mental conditioning of children who are being victimized by a system in order to become either inane or criminal. Let me read some lyrics to you. This is by a popular artist. It's called Cuff It. I'm going to bleep some stuff out. If you know, like I know, you'll know some of this stuff is stand-in for narcotics, for casual use of narcotics. Okay? I feel like falling in love. I'm in the mood to bleep something. I need some drink in my cup. Hey, pour me a drink. I'm in the mood to F something up. I want to go missing. I need a prescription. I want to go higher. I want to go where nobody's been. Have you ever had fun like this? We gonna F something up tonight. Black lights, spaceships fly. Spaceships fly. Yeah, unapologetic when we F something up tonight. You bet you'll go far, bet you'll see stars, bet you'll elevate, because I feel like falling in love. Now, let me put something to y'all. How this collaborates with all the propaganda that's out in Waukegan. And yeah, I'm offended. What they have out there on them LED signs, vape, smoke, weed, and all that stuff, aliens. Look at that back wall. See that right there? They've even weaponized Cookie Monster. Cookies is a brand of cannabis. It is appealing to children, whether you like it or not. Y'all have got to create counter propaganda, and you can't let it die. You can't do it this year and say, we did our part. No, and I'm going to repeat, Durant's, wherever you are, I'm still mad at you. Get the Lake County Health Department in here and make them earn their damn pay.
Yeah. And,
Go ahead, Ms. Anderson. I'll come to you.
okay, and, Mr. Depew, you talked about the survey. The Wellness Committee is working with the Lake County Health Department to get that survey that you were talking about out to the students in, like you say, in April. I was going to say it about the data, and I seen it was from 2022.
Yes, ma'am.
Right, and so it's going to be interesting to see the newer data, because my other question about the data, and where you were pointing out it was decreasing, and I'm wondering if it was decreasing because, and like you said, that you only have data based on the students that have been caught, and so we got data for that. But it's much higher, and that data is going to be much higher. And I don't want us to put a narrative out there that this crisis, I'm going to say epidemic, among our kids is decreasing, because it is not. And so the other thing, including what the parents are saying, see, we have to do a little bit of outreach, because see, these students can go into any corner store and buy a vape. Now, it may just be tobacco vape, right? But they put what they want to put in them, and they walk around in the schools. My point why I brought this up for discussion was because our laws have changed, and as of January 1st, the law took effect that there is to be, wait, let me get it right. Vaping is prohibited in all public places, and our schools are public places.
Yes, ma'am.
And so, with all of the resources, the CASAs, and all the training and stuff that you're talking about, right? I want us to go further, quicker, because we have to be within the law. And if we're not within the law, and I know for a fact that the state superintendent, the state board of education, they are touring schools, and they're not gonna say, I'm sure they will send the superintendent notice that they're going to be in Waukegan, right? But they're going to all schools in Illinois, and so if we have not come up with some type of plan to eliminate the vaping in the buildings, okay, we're gonna be in trouble. Yeah. And so that was one of my main reasons for bringing this forth. Good. But the other thing, and I do a lot of research too, and I got my little research device here, and I've been looking at the effects of vaping on children, right? Yeah. And see, and just that's what I would really like to see our kids learn about what it does to their brain development, what it does to their organs when they take a puff off that vape canister, whatever it's called, that they're getting fine micro-sized metals all in their lungs and all of that stuff. And see, the kids need to know that. Okay, they think that they're just getting high and all that stuff and having fun, but they don't understand the long-term effects of what they're doing. And I am writing information that I can take to the senator in terms of these things being accessible in gas stations, corner stores, and all of that. And so to alleviate on that end, right? Yeah. And so I think with all of us working together, that we should be able to come up with something to stop it. Now, in terms of what do we do when kids are caught vaping? Well, it used to be in the school district, you couldn't have cigarettes, you couldn't have a cigarette lighter, else you were getting consequences. But now all of that stuff is, you know, I guess it's like, you know, it's being acceptable. It's not.
That is incorrect.
Yeah, no, I know. But I'm just saying, society is kind of like, oh, well, they're doing it, new times, new kids, all that. No, yes. Laws are still laws.
You're right. Absolutely.
And we have to follow them.
We do.
Yeah.
We do.
Yeah.
Mr. Sabecki?
All right.
Oh, and I'm sorry, and I hate to do that to you. I just want to do time check. It's 9:55. I'm letting everybody know at 10 p.m. Meeting adjourned.
So I got 5 minutes.
You got. I would hope not.
So my question on this whole vaping thing, it's a community thing. Mm-hmm. You know, our city council just a couple weeks ago wanted to pass this stuff in our gas station, unregulated stuff.
Yeah.
But yet nobody from the school district was there. 15,000 plus kids in this district, no representation from anyone from the school district. But we go there when we want about the wraparound center. We go there about fence variations. We should have been down there for that. Yeah, because if it's being sold in the gas stations, the kids are getting it.
Yes.
Bottom line, we ain't gonna solve a vaping problem in our schools if it's readily available in our community. That's right. In every store in the community. Second of all, safety aspect of it. I did say something, and LeBaron did comment on it. He believes so in that. But is Narlaxin available in our schools? Narcan. We don't know what's in this stuff. It needs to be readily available, not just trained by our nurses. It needs to be at the sporting events. Our athletic directors need to be trained in it. I run a nonprofit in Gurney Youth Baseball. We this year implemented it. All of our coaches have been trained on it. We carry it because we don't know. I don't know if anyone in this room's ever done CPR
Oh, yeah.
on a kid. I've done it hundreds of times. I've watched kids die in my arms. I have over 20 years in the medical field. Working in the ER, I was on the code team in the ER. Anytime there's a code in the hospital, we responded to it. And seconds count, especially when it comes to kids. In a short story, my 12-year-old, a couple months ago, I brought him to his therapy appointment in Crystal Lake. He wanted to stop at the gas station to get something to drink before his appointment. We pulled in, and there was a lady ODing right there in the parking lot. I checked her pulse, 15. I carry naloxone in both my vehicles. I administered Narcan, and within seconds, that lady was alert, talking, and everything else. And that just shows. You know, even if it's not the kids, especially at sporting events or whatever, we don't know who's coming to the schools. We don't know who's coming to the sporting events. That stuff, you don't have to have a prescription for anymore. Our medical officer on the Waukegan Fire Department teaches it. It's readily available through the health department. Anybody can get it now and carry it. And I recommend anyone it is. It's very easy to use, and it saves lives.
Thank you for that, Mr. Becky. Ms. Lindsay?
There's a couple points that I want to make sure we're touching on in this conversation. So with the slides, we had, store, friend, and adult that's not their parent, which I'm glad to see our parents aren't just passing it out according to this data. But there's no information on street, like where they're getting it from the street. And to the point that several are making, we don't know what that's laced with, right? Even if they're getting the cartridges, while that's regulated through the state, a lot of street cartridges have other things that are even more damaging to the lungs. So I was kind of surprised not to see that in there. I would like to see the city crack down on the vendors that are selling it to underage people. I think that is definitely a part of the conversation. We can't control the vendors, right, who are selling it, but we should have higher expectations as a community citywide to make sure that that's being cracked down on. So that's obviously not on us. But I believe in these smoke shops, they're not allowed to sell THC. It's the CBD that's still impacting their brain. Is that, yeah. Delta 8. So it's THC. It is THC, just not, okay.
It's even worse when they only have THC in a product.
Right.
CBD, that's an antagonist. It helps you process
Right.
it,
Yeah.
right? So they're just giving pure THC, but for the scientifically modified hemp plants.
Okay, so I'm gonna do more research personally on the Delta 8 aspect because, yeah, that's a huge concern.
Delta 8, Delta 9, THCO.
Got it, THCO and the 9. Okay, but I think one of the aspects that this is a symptom. Behaviors are symptoms of a deeper problem, right? And so we have to be getting at the root cause. Typically, people go to substances to address some internal strife or struggle, and that's something that we need to have more intensely addressed. We are doing social emotional learning for our elementary school students. I'm learning that we don't have like the 3rd and 5th health courses anymore for like sex ed or like puberty or that sort of thing, but I feel like this would be a component to that, but you address that there's an elementary school curriculum that you're looking into. So I think that needs to be part of it. But but social emotional learning isn't as dominant as the students get older, and that's an aspect that I think we need to really look at. I love that we're going to be getting our wraparound center pretty soon, but that's reactive, not proactive. So I think we just really need to try to drill down. It's not just peer pressure, it's self-medicating in a lot of cases, even for our parents. So I would like a lot more conversation and dialogue around that aspect, because if we're addressing the reason why they're being pulled to these things, that's going to be way better than things we can't control, like stopping these businesses from selling to those that shouldn't have access to it.
Yeah, and Mr. Riddle.
I just want to say that, it isn't just a problem here. It isn't just a problem, as you mentioned, across the United States. It is becoming a worldwide problem. America is the largest vaping nation in the world right now. Right behind us is the UK. The UK has just banned all disposable vapes. They realize it. There are about 8 countries in the world that have totally banned vapes. Australia is one of them. I don't think America is going to take action. I think we have to, what some of our people out here, our family members and said is that we're going to have parents involved in this because it isn't going to happen enough. It isn't going to happen quick enough. It took many years for the government to ban cigarettes, and to really get that crisis out there. Not to ban cigarettes so much, but to actually get out there the dangers of them. And then e-cigarettes came along, and we didn't move fast enough on this, and it's grown so fast, so quickly, that it is a major problem. And unless we get parents behind this and take stiff action, we're not going to stop it. I know kids that go to schools, as they've been talking about in Woodland or Elmhurst, some of these other schools, and I've talked to the kids there, and I talk to kids because I have family in England. Vaping, it takes place over there in a big way. So we really need the parents behind it to stop it.
Absolutely.
And we need to educate our kids. And it's highly addictive. It's highly addictive. So unless we get the government behind it and get our parents behind it, we're not going to be able to stop it. But we have to take action in the schools. As you said, Ms. Hannah, I believe the law is there. There has to be consequences when we find these kids. And our security gives up if we don't take consequences.
So I do want to hear from the other board members. I
want to just say this with Mr. Riddle. You're absolutely correct. And see, even though we have to have consequences for the kids, because that's what the big thing is, that they're doing this stuff and there's no consequence.
That is incorrect.
Yeah,
now, I don't know. I'm not saying. I'm just saying what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Right. But we are a school, and we do have a mission to educate as well. So
Absolutely.
I mean, this is just another thing for us
yeah.
to deal with.
Go ahead, Mr. McBride.
To my respective aldermen out there, you two young ladies, you guys, I heard you loud and clear. The bottom line to it is subliminal. Even with cigarettes, if you go into our community and look at the billboards, you got a lady sitting up there with a Virginia Slim holding her hand that's saying smoke cigarettes. Also, once again, it's a money making. Nobody cares nothing about the kids. As long as you can get the dollar, I'm going to not only sell vapes, I'm going to come up with, when I go into the filling stations, I look, they got all kinds. And they keep on bringing them, And I can't get my gas because I got young people behind me buying vapes. And so the bottom line to it, we up against something that's hard to just beat. I'm just saying, all because of the fact that almighty dollar. Once again, as Temptations say, this world is a ball of confusion. There's a whole lot of stuff going on now that used to go on. I heard you talking about marijuana dispensaries. They putting them all over the place now. But years ago, once again, I had friends of mine went to the penitentiary for a nickel bag of weed.
Right.
But look at where we at today. It's all about the money. And the bottom line to it, as Marvin Gaye say, as I look around the world and fill my heart with sorrow, little boys are here today and tomorrow, who really cares? All they care about is that dollar.
Yeah.
Miss Lindsay.
I apologize. There was one other aspect I wanted to touch on. I don't like rumors. I like when people feel confident to come and say it for themselves. But some of the aspects that I am hearing is that there's teachers that are saying that students are coming with the products and they don't have those consequences. And so I think that just goes into the numbers aren't quite accurate. I just want to make sure that our staff is following through of reporting and identifying the students, because if we're not, if we're thinking, oh, well, it's just a mistake, I don't want this on their record or what have you, that's an aspect of limiting care, right? We're not doing service to our students to get them the supports that they need when they're in possession of these aspects. So I'm wanting to make sure that it is a good thing for teachers to come forward and address these issues with these students and bring it to the attention
Thank you.
of the administration, right?
ma'am.
Building administration, upper administration.
Thank you.
Because if these kids are using the substances, there needs to be interventions. And if it's not being accurately reported as exactly what it is,
Yes, ma'am.
we are limiting their care.
That is absolutely right.
So I apologize, I forgot to mention that before.
And I don't know about this, but I'm gonna ask a question anyway. Maybe you can look into it. The testing for drugs and in school. I'm just gonna put that out there, and maybe
We need to look into that.
Yeah,
I don't
that's
know
what
the
I-
legal liabilities around that. I don't.
Right.
There's
I'm
that.
just-
Yeah.
yeah, I'm
That.
just
But I did
asking.
write that down, so we can't answer that right now. But
Yeah.
that's something we'd have to look with our general counsel.
And I'll-
sure, and parent consent and all other kind of.
So I'll take I got a couple of things to wrap up, and then we are going home. I want to level set, and there were some things that were said. So things that the Board of Education has done is we went after their pockets. The Board of Education of Waukegan Public Schools sued vape companies, and we won that civil suit, right? It did not necessarily stop it. It's still a billion-dollar industry, but there were payouts and requirements. That was one way that we took action, is by joining on the lawsuit, talking about the fact that they went after and that they are intentionally marketing to students. That was the basis of our lawsuit, is that by making it attractive is you are incentivizing them to go and do the things like the gummies and the other stuff.
Right.
Very good point.
Last year, 2022. Yeah, just like we just got the
recently
funds
had
in
sworn items
2023.
to
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
that
it was a conglomerate of a bunch of school districts across the nation.
So yeah, that was the one, is that we are taking action because we don't just believe that nothing's happening. I do want to also reaffirm that we are a drug-free zone. That does not, again, if we find drugs and there's drugs that are being used, the prohibition is that it's not allowed. We already have a policy that does not allow. And now if there are concerns, and this is going back to consequences, we use that word. We talk about reading, we talk about exclusion, and I agree with limiting care. There's a difference between consequences and suspension.
Yes.
And so while we may not suspend a kid or send a kid home, because if you're telling me that the kids are struggling to read, but I'm going to suspend them so that they're no longer in the classroom, that kind of doesn't make sense.
Right.
What I will give as an example that I saw, and this is what I hope we can as take away, there were things that Director Dupuy was recommending. One that I saw that he implemented as a culture and climate specialist is I got to sit in a restorative justice conversation in which 7th graders, which is what was shocking about it, brought in vodka in a water bottle. Now they brought in vodka in a water bottle, and we're talking about alcohol, as we saw, is that was the most accessible.
Yeah.
And we know, right? These are not things, when we talk about some of the things that we don't know, we know the facts in of alcohol and alcoholism and alcohol abuse on adolescent bodies. And so what happened was these individuals came in, they were caught, and instead of sending them home, guess what? They had to leave class 5 minutes before the rest of their peers. They had to be escorted to the classroom. They had to eat lunch with the principal. They had to apologize to their students in front of their parents about what it was what they were doing caused harm to the school community. That is a consequence.
Yeah.
That didn't exclude them from school. And so as we talk about consequences, I just want to be very, very clear. Coming down hard doesn't necessarily mean that we have to perpetuate things that exclude our students from opportunity. And so I want to say is that as we have this conversation, we do have to realign and change our vocabulary as to what consequences are and what are our effective consequences. It's because if it's an addiction, if I send you home, you're going to come back and you're going to do the same thing. And so I do appreciate us broadening it. I also, just for the record, want to say we do have health requirements. It's a state mandate. We all go through that drug. I know it's at freshman year. I don't know how they catch you up. But we would want to make sure now if there are continued things that need to be done, let's do them. But we do have those touch points, which are required by the state in order for us to do. That's a part of the curriculum. It's not a one-off. It's not a Waukegan thing. It looks like Director Dupuy has some recommendations as to how to enhance that going down to the elementary school level. So we look forward to that. And then I think it is a community conversation as to how we can be advocates. You talked about solutions, Ms. Hannah, in order to get the information there. But to parents, to community, Waukegan Public Schools are a drug-free zone. what goes on in your house and in your home, I can't control. But if your students are caught, again, the consequence may not, I don't know if it'll be suspension. It could be, but I'm not going to just say that. Yes, go ahead, Director.
May I allow to say something? I just wanted to go ahead and actually highlight one of the comments that were made about our climate and culture specialists getting PD. Part of what we did when we went to California 2 weeks ago was to go to a PD that implemented the same principles that I implemented when I was a climate and culture specialist. With Kelvin Oliver was the Leaving the Village was the PD that I took a team of high schoolers and middle school climate and culture specialists. The idea and the ask from them was that when we go over there, we're going to learn alternative to suspensions and how to hold kids accountable in a meaningful manner, of which when they return back, their role is to go ahead and on April 8th is to go ahead and give a PD on different ways that how can we hold our students accountable in a meaningful way, as Mr. President Hewing said. That's what we want to do. So we need to think about how can we just continue to hold our students accountable in a meaningful way that will actually bring about transformation in their behavior. And part of what they will be doing is giving PD of what they learned to their peers about these are some practical ways we could turn the tide of holding our students accountable at the end of the day.
Thank you, Director
Thank
Dupuy,
you,
for the
sir.
presentation. So it is
very
now
important.
10:15.
Yeah,
I would. Is it adding to? I was gonna call for adjournment. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by
Second.
Mr. McBride, second by Mr. Riddle. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Mr.